Hi, everybody, and welcome. It is October 4th, 2023, starting a few moments late because I was this morning in a beautiful place in nature with some beautiful friends and cheeky, having a lovely time around like a little watering hole and doing a cold plunge. I probably look like I have a lot of sun on my face and spent the time enjoying life and being in nature and not being fearful or concerned. And I'm happy to hear no reports of weirdness or anything like that from today. So as ever, a reminder about how we truly manifest our realities, or we are divine co-creators in wonderful levels of empowerment for our realities, and not merely like ping pong balls being bounced around by something larger. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is level 1, lesson 9, and it is all about flying rainbow lasagna and DNA. This week and next week will all be, I know it's not a good, it's a mixed metaphor, the meat and potatoes of the lasagna, even though lasagna traditionally does not contain potatoes in it. The very nourishing, substantive information of what flying rainbow lasagna is, how it relates to your DNA, what is actually happening on an internal level when you embody and align with this as a verb, as an embodiment, not merely as an abstract concept. So the first thing is, I urge everyone and invite everyone, as always, to check out the recordings from 10 years ago. These are very, very relevant. I don't have any rants where I have to say, everything is different now, and I was totally, I don't want to be taken out of context of the way that I was speaking about things 10 years ago. Actually, my beautiful, pure abstraction of what I taught about 10 years ago remains very valid and very applicable to your present situation of what flying rainbow lasagna is and how it relates to DNA. So here are some of the three, I want to say, basic ways that DNA is being affected by or can be changed and transformed by the activity known as flying rainbow lasagna. The first thing is to recognize that your DNA, on an innate level, already before I arrived as a walk-in 20 years ago, was doing its own genetic dance. So the concept of your DNA being a dancing, moving object is not new. And I will draw this out for you. Your DNA is not a flat, static object. It is often presented, maybe in an initiatory science textbook, as something that is simply an X-shaped chromosome or a Y-shaped chromosome. DNA, at times during the cell's lifespan, biological cellular lifespan, it does achieve those shapes. But that is the tightly coiled an analogy of like when you're going on a vacation and you pack up all of your clothes and roll everything up very, very tightly to save the maximum amount of space and put it into your carry-on luggage. That is only during a very, very selective aspect of your life. You have all of your clothes, stored up in that way. Mostly you have your clothes accessible to you, hanging in a closet or in drawers or in some way, or possibly exploded all over your room, right? So that way you can actually find the things that you need. This is also truthful of your DNA. So only for a very, very brief amount of time in the lifespan of a cell is the DNA coiled up into the chromosome pattern. Mostly, just grabbing the color here. All right, cool. Mostly your DNA is unfurled into a substance called chromatin. Here is the outer membrane of a cell. Here is the inner nuclear membrane of your cell. And then here is what would look like a wild, crazy, gyrating ball of yarn. That right there is called chromatin. Let's write it. It's laborious to write with this pen. Oh, you can do it, Aurora. Oh, it's so hard, but I'm getting there, guys. Hooray. Chromatin. So this would be the analogy, like if you ordinarily had your DNA knitted together like a sweater, and that's what your X or Y-shaped chromosome is. But when you take all of that yarn and you just unfurl it and pull out all of the loops and have a big, giant, snarly bramble of yarn, that's called chromatin. And that is the form that your DNA is in for most of the lifespan of a cell. Cells have different lifespans. An epithelial cell in the lining of your stomach or on your skin could live for 3 weeks. A cell that is in your central nervous system, like in your spinal cord, could live for 60 years. All right. So they have wildly divergent lifespans, but they only really form into the X and the Y chromosome shape for the activity that is called mitosis or cell division. And that is when this initial cell is going to cut itself down the middle, and then this half will go and form one entirety on its own, and this half will form an entirety on its own, and they will become 2 independent daughter cells. So when that happens, that's why chromosomes are the highly organized form of DNA. But ordinarily, you have DNA in this free form, and I'm just going to go back to me and where I can gesture with you easily over here, because it is when DNA is in that unfurled state known as chromatin that it performs its behavior. So big emphasis in all of my work over the past 10 years of teaching formally. DNA has behavior. So it is not only something that is not a static object just sitting there, but it is something that does something, and the doing of the something is more than just the conveyance of what is the shape of a protein structure. A protein structure directive would be something like, this is the shape of my elbow, or this is the color of my eyes. Both acceptable things that your DNA does describe those things, but your DNA does much more. So on the esoteric level within this class, we remember that DNA is a bridge of light between the miraculous nature of you as a physical, somatic, cellular, embodied, humanoid creature, and your abstract light body. Everything that I paint, that is a series of abstractions, like what's on my shirt here, or the chakra system and the layers of your subtle body. DNA is a bridge of light. And in all of my classes, including Path of Light, which I continually invite and encourage people to participate in, you can interchange the word light for information or intelligence. What if I said, DNA is a bridge of information between the form and activity of your physical cellular structure and your body of pure time and of potentials, right? In bridge of intelligence, a bridge of data, a bridge of information. And part of the information that is contained within your DNA is its movement. So if you think of a book, like a book with pages, has information in it, but you tend to think of it as something that is static. Like somebody wrote a book 50 years ago, and then it sits on the library shelf, and the words are there, and the pages are there, and the grammar is there, and it doesn't change or shift over time. But your DNA is different. It is a book, or you consider it to be like a set of scrolls, like papyrus or something like that. But it has behavior in that it shifts over time, and it shifts and responds to stimuli, environment, and context. And that is where the empowerment comes from. So when DNA was first really discovered and has been studied since, like, let's say the 1940s in, Earth's human culture, the idea of genetic fatalism became a foundation of your science and also of your culture, that it was used for a lot of justifications and excuses. Things like, blah, 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 it's not my fault. It is written in my DNA, right? It's like saying it is written in the book of me, and there's no escaping that description of the book of me. But then greater scientists started to study this more. So I point people in the direction of Bruce Lipton, not a total endorsement of the man, but he is a biological research scientist that has done very good work in recognizing the science of epigenetics. That's EPI as the prefix. Epigenetics. Epi means within. An epiphenomenon is a phenomenon within a phenomenon. So epigenetics is a code that rules the code. if you have identical twins mean that the original ovum that was fertilized split into two fetuses, and they have copies of the same book, same exact potentials. But in life, it is known that identical twins do not develop identical diseases. One twin might develop a genetic disease, quote unquote, like cancer, while the other one is cancer-free. How can this be comprehended when ostensibly they're starting off with the same book? And the answer is because this book is more like one of those choose your own adventure novels. If you read those, it's kind of like young adult fiction. Maybe you read when you were 12 years old or something. Sorry, I have to drink a little bit. I came home and I ate some cookies very, very fast in order to be able to carb up before I do my class here. Gotta wash down those cookies. Choose your own adventure novel. These are rather entertaining stories that contain potentials. It's not just a linear journey through reading the book. So the book goes like this. You're walking down a forest path and you come to a Y in the road. If you choose to turn to the left, go to page 17. If you choose to turn to the right, go to page 34. And the very same book, the very same information, the pages of the book can be experienced differently depending upon the choices that you make at critical junctures throughout the narrative story. That's you in your life with your DNA. So as DNA was first discovered and witnessed inside of your cells, it was recognized to be, first of all, a descriptor for proteins, their shape and their folding structure. That is accurate. But then DNA also is a set of, like an instruction manual and a blueprint manual for your body, how to build stuff and also what to do with that stuff. And depending upon the choices that you make, the stuff comes out differently. So it's not just a blueprint where it's like the blueprint is hard and fast. And because something is written in there, like you will have a 2x4 that will be this length and will always be this length. And that is just part of how you build the house called you. The answer really is that the house can be built very differently depending upon the way that that blueprint is accessed. That is what current medical science calls epigenetics. And it is understood to be arising from a phenomenon that is called methylation. And methylation means how many times a DNA strand is wound around one of these little proteins that's kind of like a spool, like the way that you wind thread around a spool. And if you coil the DNA very, very tightly, it is methylated. The RNA messengers are not able to access it. It's like pages of the book of you that are stuck together. So imagine that this is, my hand is a coil of DNA, and it's coiled up together, and that each one of these loops represents a loop of information or a bridge of light. And if my coils are very, very close together, here's another little something. This is your RNA messenger that ordinarily goes along here, and it reads it reads like Braille. It reads the text, the surface texture of your DNA, and derives information from that. And if these pages are stuck together, the RNA messenger is not able to effectively feel and sense the textural structure of the information contained in there. The information is inaccessible. If these loops are separated like this or even widely unfurled, then it makes it possible for the little RNA messenger to get in there and read those loops. So in some sense, the RNA messenger reads loops of strands that are still interwoven together as two-stranded DNA. Sometimes the individual strand itself is split apart into a Y, kind of like a zipper that is unzipped. And then the RNA messenger is able to read 1/2 of the unzipped DNA and derive information from its bumpy, toothy structure and make replicas based upon that. All of this is the empowerment. If you have an instruction manual for you and you have something written in the instruction manual that's like the chapter on like how to get sick and build a lot of diseases, you can have that in your DNA. But if that chapter is closed off, if it's tightly coiled, not accessible to the RNA messengers that read it, not going to manifest those diseases. They are potentials that are never manifested in your body. Likewise, if you have a chapter that says how to dismantle a tumor in 3 easy steps. You want that to be accessible to your RNA messengers. If it is tightly coiled up, then you have the solution to health challenges in your DNA, but it is inaccessible. What determines the level of methylation or tight scrolled upness of your DNA? And the answer to that is a very positive answer because it is largely empowering. It has to do with your thoughts, your value system, your belief structure, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and how you're behaving. Stuff that is largely within your control. So I always thank you guys for being a part of my class, for attenuating, paying attention, for exposing yourself to this information about flying rainbow lasagna, because one of the things that changes the dance movements of your DNA, and also whether pages are open or closed in your book of you, is the information that you read. The information that you expose yourself to literally creates and generates and sustains a particular dance state that is a state of either health and vitality, longevity, continued existence, or a state of illness, decrepitude, disease, and death, eventual death. All right. And this is basically like a primer on how I, as Flying Rainbow Lasagna, am affecting all of you guys in terms of your DNA. Big stuff. Every time you learn a new thought, you are exposing your DNA to a new dance and making it possible for it to dance in new movements. And that's any kind of thought. So now you really start to comprehend when I say bridge of light. If there is, let's say somebody gives you a book of lies, like physical book, or a television program that programs you hypnotically with a bunch of lies, and you ingest those lies, then that causes a change in the way that your DNA is structured and the way that your DNA is behaving. Literally, the things that you choose to be exposed to or thoughts that you choose to think is a huge factor in determining genetic behavior and the outcome of your life. So you can, in large part, be in control of what you read and what you see and what you choose to ingest. And let's say you're around something like I've lived in situations where someone else is watching the TV that has the bad news of the day at the end of the day, and I can hear it. It's coming inside of me, but I don't really want it inside of me. So I was like, no, clear that out, clear that out. DNA, don't listen, because there are a lot of negative disempowerment stories that are in the world right now intentionally to limit your DNA. So government and other control systems influence your mind and influence your DNA as a natural part of their behavioral control that is considered to be socially normative, but I don't consider it to be socially positive. And I encourage everyone to become totally self-empowered in the information that you choose to ingest and the things that you choose to believe in as truth. But this goes even deeper because this goes into the sense of mimicry. Our DNA doesn't just derive its stories for what behavior it should do from some impersonal place like a book, a magazine, or TV, essentially, the mass media. You and your DNA derive your sense of truth initially from the people around you. So I am here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and I will speak today a little bit about my personal journey of like how it came into being and what was the motivation for making this. It's actually a very profound story with a lot of emotions tied up in it. So although my teaching from 10 years ago is relatively unemotional, and I've done a lot of processing about it, there's still a lot of stuff there that is like, in need of healing and recognition. It didn't, what I'm trying to say is that my genesis of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna shape was not something that happened from me, Aurora, in a higher dimensional, interdimensional state where like everything's cool. I didn't sit by like a lazy river one day and be like, la, 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 la. It's such a nice, beautiful day with blue sky and white puffy clouds. And I think I'll invent the Flying Rainbow Lasagna because everything is so great. That was totally not what was going on. What was going on was a very, very incredibly difficult situation where there was a turmoil or interdimensional battle at the higher levels of reality, even outside of the time-space continuum, huge destabilizations there. And the witnessing of huge destabilizations in this life that I walked into and became a part of. So a time of great turmoil, a moment of extreme duress. Flying Rainbow Lasagna was created out of necessity in a moment of extreme duress, and was my response to the seemingly impossible pile of SHIT that was going on, because I could see when you're in that higher dimensional state, all time is now. And you can see and sense and anticipate everything that's happening. And you can see, well, if this bad thing happens over here, that's not just one little discrete bad thing over here. That's going to make that bad thing happen, that bad thing happen, that bad thing happen. And then you have a very, very, very large bad thing that's going to happen over here. And I, as Aurora, my collective, a larger freedom state that is a waveform presence that exists as an impulse in the mind of divinity, bouncing on the network of stars, you know, from star system to star system. I perceived all of this, and I did the calculations, and I'm like, okay, something needs to happen to prevent this cascade of bad things, so that this big bad thing doesn't happen. And the thing that I did was an augmentation of the already established rules of reality to create Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And I created it in that moment as a holistic presence, meaning a whole entire shape, a whole entire concept, a whole entire series of events radiating outward or connected to that concept, and a whole significant implication of what that is. In one moment, created it. And in the creation of that moment, you could kind of imagine like a giant like brawl that was going on. Everyone's struggling, and all these different vast systems and networks are struggling in difficulties, and many, many things are going on. And all of a sudden, like, you know, like the record skips, everyone stops. This new thing is here, the lasagna. And everyone's like, you, because when you make something new in the world, you take responsibility for it. First of all, nothing is hidden. And also, you get to name it. And they're like, what is it? And I called it a flying rainbow because it is rainbow colored. And then I chose the word lasagna because it was the closest word within the human lexicon to this shape, which is curly like the curly edge of a lasagna noodle. I literally didn't have better languaging or descriptive skills to be able to say what this is and to name it. And it really stuck. The name, now I laugh about it. In the moment, I'm like, well, of course, it's a flying rainbow lasagna. And that seemed very intuitively obvious to me. It was not until I really interacted with Earth's culture a lot more that I came to find out how much those three words together are like something that just, it makes people make this face. They're like, it is a what? And then it doesn't make sense. And it's a very odd shape to go into your ears. And that later on, I'm like, I have to think of a better name for this, and something much more serious and something much more whatever. And it never has been able to be changed in its name. It is what it is. So that is something that we can laugh at lightheartedly. Like you imagine like this very difficult interdimensional battle, actually like a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma being experienced by many, many people. All of a sudden, the creation of this shape, and then naming it the flying rainbow lasagna. All of those things now can seem kind of like hilarious, but it's very serious stuff. And yeah, it's a very deep, serious concept or profound concept. And when I started sharing it with people, in especially the first few years of me being here, this is why I wanted to get this sculpture before I started over here. This is the original Flying Rainbow Lasagna sculpture that I created. And I know the lighting is not that great, but you can see another one that I have hanging up over there. That one I did many, many years later. This is the very, very first one. And you can still see these little edges over here. I baked it in an oven. So it's got like these little like places where it was on the rack of the oven. It's like, you know, kids' clay. It's kids' clay. And I used to stand around and like just trying to offer this to people. I didn't have good communication skills the way that I do now, but I'm like, I have something to share with you. It's this. And people would kind of look at it and I'd say, it's flying rainbow lasagna. And they kind of look at me like that. And so it took many years. It took many years to break through that communication difficulty, to get people to recognize what this even is that I'm talking about and its value. Let me just drink a little bit here. Hi, welcome to the person that just joined the meeting. So this is all significant because I do my genetic dance in a very, very different way. And I'll go back to the sculpture and the genesis of how I actually started making sculptures about it as an artist, because I didn't pop out here as Aurora and instantaneously make the lasagna. It actually took me many years to be able to learn about art supplies and how to make it. But I had the idea and the concept fully formed in my mind. And the most important thing is not what was in my mind, but what my DNA was doing. So, okay. When you first come here as a little tiny human infant, your DNA is doing a dance of infinity. So DNA does a dance. It's unfurled, it's unzipped. It coils itself up, it uncoils itself. It splices itself with these very special enzymes, allows certain areas to be read, resplices them, coils itself back up. And it's doing that on a very, very fast rate on a subcellular level inside of your body, inside of trillions of your cells, all the time. That is just what you're doing. And you have certain patterns that are the patterns that I call your factory settings, like alluding to your phone call, your phone technology or something like that. The way you came here as a little tiny infant. And I know that infants come here into certain bodies that have certain tendencies, but here's the truth. When you first came here, and you had your divine connection, and you remember that you're God in a human body, you're a divine presence, you're a divine co-creator, you're totally invested in and lifted and buoyed by cosmic consciousness, you get exposed to the dance movements of those around you. Your immediate family, your mommy, your daddy, brothers, aunts, sisters, uncles, community members, teachers, babysitters, caregivers, and other people, they're all doing a different dance. They're doing a dance like this. That is the dance of the presence of death, the dance of the reality of death. But you don't know about death yet. You're like, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm proven, everything is doing great. And at a certain point, your DNA learns to mimic the unhealthy dance patterns of those that are around you, who are your caregivers. You internalize their flaws, and their flaws have been passed down from generation to generation, and they are not healthy or positive DNA behaviors. So although your family might love you and care for you, unfortunately, just the fact that you have been born, you're this new human little infant, and they kind of pass you around the family, and everybody holds you, and everybody who holds you puts an imprint upon you that is about like, oh, like this is how you lose your eyesight. You're gonna have to wear glasses later. Or this is how you get diabetes. Grandpa has diabetes. Or this is how you die. I've internalized the truth of mortality, and I now pass that information along to you. And this is not a verbal teaching. Like right now, I'm, Professor air quotes, and I'm standing in front of you, and I'm like, giving you information at the blackboard. That is one level of teaching. But there is a different level of teaching that is through mimicry. That is really how little children learn. So I don't know if I don't have children of my own that are physical children. I have done a lot of work in childcare, being a professional babysitter and a nanny. So I certainly have worked with a lot of really wonderful children, watching them in their levels of development. This is how children really learn. Like before they are school age, they learn by watching you. They model what you are doing. So if they see you, like you put stuff in a pan, you cook it on the stove, and they've got like their little kid's stove, with like little wooden pretend eggs and frying pan, and they pretend to be doing what you're doing. little children model what they are doing in a form of positive biological mimicry to learn positive pro-survival skills. And this is one sense where these positive pro-survival mimicry tendencies have been totally turned against the user because you're mimicking people that don't have positive information and positive life-affirming, life-extending tendencies around you. So what happens in the mimicry is you come here as a little baby, your DNA is doing its groove and dance, the I'm connected to the cosmic architecture dance, the I'm not only immortal dance, but I don't even know about or think about death. And then through watching others, you start to learn their dance, and their dance influences you. And you start to learn, like, oh, like that's the dance of decrepitude. You're going to get older. Your skin is going to look different. Your skin's going to get wrinkled. I mean, little children don't necessarily know that they're doing this, but like when they meet their grandparents or elders, they look at them and they receive a program in their DNA that is beyond like teaching on a classroom blackboard that says to the DNA, this is the decrepitude program, and you will run this program in your body. It is the sense of inevitability. You will grow older and your skin will become wrinkled, and maybe grandmother walks with a cane like this, and you're like, oh, and you become bent over, and that is what it is to be older, all right? And then there is death. There is the internalization of the truth of death. And so the people around you are already running that program, and your DNA is dancing and mimicking what they're doing in the expectation of death. You might not even be consciously cognitively aware of the concept of death as a little tiny child, but almost every one of you had this experience at a certain time. Maybe you had a goldfish that died, or a hamster, or a family member, maybe grandma died, somebody in your community died. And you were like, what is this? Where did they go? What happened? It is incomprehensible. And maybe they said to you, oh, like your goldfish went bye-bye. This went bye-bye, or like grandma went bye-bye. Bye-bye. And as they teach that to you, a new dance movement is imposed upon the natural factory settings, pristine behavior of your DNA, which is recognition that you are an infinite being, and that there's no such thing as death, and that you are immortal and connected to the continuum of consciousness, never ending. And you start to dance in that truthfulness of their truth, to participate in the reality structure that is consensual reality in the world of mortality. This is not like an evil malevolence where everyone in your community is like, oh good, new baby, let's ruin their DNA. It's nothing like that at all. It is considered to be a normal part of the learning process, where you come to Earth and they're like, welcome to the human race. This is what it's all about. This is what life is like down here. And you kind of have to break it to them gently, but everyone considers it to be simply a fact of life. Born, you live, you die. It's considered a fact of life. Or even teaching little children about the seasons. Like plant a seed in the spring, it grows over the summer, get the fruit in the autumn, plant dies, plant goes bye-bye. All of these things are used in order to teach and exemplify to children, to internalize the truth of death. But the truth of death is simply a story that is an overlay, not more valid than the truthful information that you came here with your DNA in its wild, free form, its feral nature, which is to recognize that death is not a thing and is not something that you will experience at all, but an overlay and a cultural, I want to call it an ism, like a thing that is innate to your culture, but not something that has its own innate validity across all cultures, all right? So I'm telling you right now that information that you receive and internalize changes the behavior of your DNA. That you came here as a little child, your culture acculturated you, and you recalibrated to accept and embody and run the programs of decrepitude and death. I am here to give you a new dance movement. All right. And this is part of cosmic law. Like if you come here, you're a little baby, and they're going to pass you around, you're going to get imprinted with everyone else's genetic limitations. I can come here and I can dance like a flying rainbow lasagna in this body. And I can change and reweave the genetic architecture or series of event structures in this body so that it does not exemplify death. And really, that is the incredibly profound, traumatic, fraught moment that I came in. I came in through the portal of someone else's impending death. Someone else, a woman who was 27 years old, who was running the same DNA programs that you have been most likely running in your life. Came here as a beautiful infant, imprinted in mimicry from her family and from cultural precepts, and was conditioned to expect death. And the body was in the process of actually dying. And in order to prevent all of these negative repercussions, I invented a way not only to come into the body, because that wouldn't be like, let's say the analogy would be like house is on fire. Like there is a house that is on fire. Hooray, like I can make a magical interdimensional portal and then I can be in a house that's on fire. Not really that much of an improvement. What about if I can get into that house that's on fire and put out the fire? What if the flying rainbow lasagna is not just an interdimensional portal for me to oscillate into this body, but is also a tool for healing those tendencies that are actually not divine or universal or cosmic or valid tendencies, and to change and transform those genes. And that is what I did. Came into this body and I kept it alive. And also I will give a lot of credit towards the grace of God, like a force field of grace that also helped to keep this physical structure alive so that I could come into it, so that I could do this DNA rearrangement, like had an enormous amount of cosmic support in doing this. But also you have to understand, like just as I am the innovator that created this for the first time, I am not the only person in the world that will only be able to experience this. And actually the events of persecution that I've experienced over the past 2 years has been a big giant cosmic negotiation about that. Kind of like, okay, like you can do your thing and you can be flying rainbow lasagna and not die, but you can't give it to all these other people because that's just gonna rock the boat a lot. And I'm like, yeah, actually I can, because that's one of these cosmic law lessons, that once you think a thought, it is not only discrete to you, it is available as a thought in the larger thought structure of continuum of consciousness. So when you innovate something new, like let's say a new song, you're going to write a new melody or a new series of lyrics, and you're the first person that wrote that song, but it's not really proprietary to you. Even though I know that there's human copyrights and things like that, but on the cosmic law level, when you innovate something and you do something for the first time, it is not proprietary to you. It is something that you get the credit for. You're the first, but then others can take that song, pattern, or tendency and do it themselves and apply it to their own existence. That is my utter intention for the flying rainbow lasagna, and has been the whole entire time. In fact, in that moment of creation, of making the flying rainbow lasagna, in the very difficult moment of the death of the previous occupant of this body and of my coming into this body, it was totally a choice that I made, where I could have been like, this is the flying rainbow lasagna. It's the solution to how you can die without dying and how your body can change and heal. And you can do all these new genetic acrobatics. And I could have just been like, okay, that's enough. Time for me to swim on, like into the next existence. See you suckers. And I didn't do that, because if I had done that, it would have been like, okay, great. Like this idea was created. It's an abstraction in the cosmos. Someone's going to come up with this idea at some point. Like it's an idea that's floating around. It exists in an abstract state of pure energy, but hasn't yet been embodied in, like, let's say, words or a form of writing or a sculpture or a painting. It was just a concept. And in creating something that is just a concept or a thought form, someone at some point would have come upon that idea. And there would have been someone that would have been like, oh, I have this amazing idea. Here's a hypertorus. Let's write a book about it, or let's make a sculpture, or let's make a painting. But that could have taken you 500 years or 5,000 years. It could have taken a very, very long amount of time. And I literally made a choice as a higher dimensional being in that moment, where I'm like, I'm not just going to let a ton of suffering happen when I could prevent, essentially, short circuit that suffering by coming into the body fully and using words, artwork, music, all these things to be able to convey this concept to the people of that time, place. And that's what I did. I made a choice. I didn't just go on my cosmic journey like, I have a great idea, flying rainbow lasagna, fix everything. Okay, great. See you suckers, cosmic journey. I didn't do that. I was like, oh, something needs to happen. Here's this augmentation in a very, very difficult moment of birth. I created this concept. And then I'm like, I want to tell it to them. And really, in backbending here and being here, I am like a grad student that has come back to school. You're in school and you're in ego school, and there's nothing wrong with having an ego. Having an ego means you have motivations. Like you have stuff, a reason, a purpose for being here. If you don't have a reason or a purpose for being here, you kind of don't be here. And so how can I be here? And you can ask that question, and I'm not insulted. Like, Aurora, like if you graduated, blah, 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 like, what are you doing here? And the answer is, I had an ego desire. That is an altruistic, noble, appropriate ego desire to share this gift with humanity directly. And I made the choice, like I'm getting in there and I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna share it with them directly. Okay, so that was 2001. I literally thought my gig would be over by 2003. We can all laugh now. Please laugh. Please laugh, because it is 2023. It's 20 years. It's a very, very long amount of time. I thought that my gig would be over in 2003 because I thought that all that I needed to do to fulfill my ego desire and my sense of purpose and being was to externalize the internal state that I know as flying rainbow lasagna in a way that other human beings could perceive it. So the very first thing I started to do when I first came here, so again, right now I have great language skills, but my language skills used to be very, very highly inadequate. I was mostly nonverbal. I had a lot of brain damage. A house was burning down that I came into, and I put out the fires, but there was a lot of brain damage, okay? So I was not very articulate. My language centers, I use a different part of my brain, essentially, to speak and communicate than the parts that are most people's language centers, all right? And it took me a long time to figure out how to communicate, how to find the right words, and then also, once you kind of know more about language, how to be perceived correctly within a culture, because I didn't even comprehend your art and your music, and things are very different where I come from. So I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna make like paintings and drawings and show them to people, and then that's a way to communicate beyond words. So initially I did all these notebooks, and actually I have stacks of notebooks that are all stored up in my closet right now. But last year I took imagery from those stacks of notebooks and took digital photographs and put it into my card series that I have, like these little cards, like a deck playing cards with no numbers on it, but it's called Aurora's Message to Humanity, because I did all of my communicating then in these little drawings in my sketchbook. And it's really incredibly profound. Like all of these, I have like these little tiny drawings. I didn't do big giant panels, 48 inches across. I have a little sketchbook, and I repetitively drew all of these little drawings that have a ton of cosmic truth in them. And I'm amazed when I went back into my old notebooks. I'm like, these are like so deep. It's so amazing. I had so much profound truth and cosmic connection. But what I didn't have was language centers. I could not put it into a palatable format to be able to make it available to humanity. And I would sometimes show people my drawings, and they'd be like, that's a bunch of lines. You know what I mean? Like they did not have an interpretive structure to be able to appreciate what I was showing to them. And I didn't have the capacity. I'm just getting a drink of water here. You guys know I don't put my jug of water on my electronics tray over here. I didn't have the capacity as I do now to be able to say, hey, wait, ahem. That's not just a silly old circle. Like that's something that means something. And all of these circles together aren't just silly old circles. They actually mean something and they actually add up to something. I didn't have that. Like it took me 20 years to get to that point, guys. So this is why, as I began my journey with my sketches and my notebooks, I'm like showing these line drawings to people, and they're kind of like, la, 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 okay, side eye. What is this? I kind of don't care. And then I'm like, okay, they're not getting it. So then I learned like, oh, like you got to put a frame around something, first of all. If you want people to know that something is special, you got to put a frame around it or put it on a pedestal. That is called art. I started to learn about your cultural imperatives of the art world. Like if you just have a random thing on a, whatever, sidewalk or sitting someplace on a table somewhere, someone be like, that's a weird random thing. But if you put it on a pedestal, they're like, that is something that is art with a capital A, and it's meaningful. All right. So I started to learn about that. And then also, like I told you, I didn't know anything about art supplies either. So I had to learn all about those types of things. And then the final thing was I had this shape as an internalization, but I had not yet built it like the way I had to figure things out. It just like from first principles, like if you're going to knit a sweater or have a dress pattern to be able to make a dress or any kind of practical item, I didn't have a template for how to make that practical item. So I began with all of these drawings and diagrams of what it was. And then eventually what I did was I took the paper of my notebooks and I rolled it together to make kind of like these vortex shapes. And I taped them together with Scotch tape. And then I made this kind of like, a shape that is very similar to this. And then I started to cut this in half and put together these half cones. And then I built paper lasagna. I don't have that original one. That one has been destroyed in my many challenging life journeys. But I made like a paper prototype. And then once I had that prototype together, I could kind of cut it apart, lay it out, look at what it would be like, just like making a dress pattern, laid out flat, and then reproduce it. And that is the process that I went through to be able to create this shape. So this shape is like a copper armature mesh with some of this like, Sculpey kids clay on top of it. And I got it and I baked it in my oven. And this was like 2003. And I was like, hooray. Like I finished my cosmic assignment. At that point, guys, like I barely knew about food. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I just ate, like food goes in here. All right. Like I just ate stuff that was available. I was numerically illiterate. I didn't know anything about numbers, commodification, having a bank account. I was totally like not able to really navigate your cultural paradigms at all. Like didn't understand what motivated you or anything about you or anything about how to communicate to you. But in an abstract sense, I had externalized the internal state known as the flying rainbow lasagna. And like I said, like I would just go around showing it to people, like, here's this thing. And they still gave me side eye, like, what is this thing? And I was like, did my job, guys, did my cosmic job, kind of like, why am I still here? And I literally had whole experience in 2003 of, I was very disappointed because I felt like did my cosmic job, worked for God, did all the things I'm supposed to do. I thought my gig would be done and that I would fulfill all of my meaning and my purpose. And my gig kept on getting extended. And at a certain point, I was very exasperated. And I was like, well, I'm still here. And I've apparently a bunch more assignments to continue to do. I'm going to need like furniture and stuff and learn about this place. That was when I actually started to learn about articulation, languaging, self-education, numbers, how you use a washing machine, all these things that I had been like really like not investing myself in learning about for the first couple of years that I was here because I was very focused and single-minded on my mission, which I simply felt that the culmination of meaning and purpose for my existence here as Aurora would be to create the flying rainbow lasagna, and that creating that sculpture, that this sculpey informal sculpture baked in my little toaster oven was enough. I came out of the oven, I'm like, dun dun, boom, 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 hooray! It's done. It wasn't done. This is why. Gentle hilarity ensues because it's been 20 years. It's still not done. So one of the big answers is that flying rainbow lasagna is such a deep and profound concept that it has taken me as an ego state many decades to really explore what it is from a first-person perspective. And also it has taken me as a teacher and communicator many, many years to be able to figure out how to contextualize this and make it accessible and communicate it effectively to humans within this culture. And then also, you know, as I had ego motivations for coming here and sharing the lasagna on an abstract level, it's turned into something much more, because it's not like my own, I don't say this. I'm like, no, my job description is only lasagna. I don't do windows. Like, I don't do anything else. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, there's a lot of poop crapola around here and a lot of things that need to be fixed up. And I've become very invested in events here, protecting this planet, and being a force for freedom, so that you can know about the lasagna, you can do the lasagna, you can do your spiritual attainment, because that's the whole point of what flying rainbow lasagna is. A new genetic dance that I make and that I embody. And just in the same way that your family members teach you, oh, like this is how you do the dance of diabetes, or this is how you do the dance of decrepitude, or whatever it is. I'm like, no, this is how you do the dance of lasagna. So how is DNA influenced? DNA is influenced through mass media, through holy writings, through books, through oration, through those traditional communication modalities. DNA is also influenced through mimicry. You look at other people doing their genetic dance and you imprint your own DNA from what they show you is possible with their bodies. So on the plus side, my time being here for several decades as Aurora, long after my expected, not expiration date, but let's just say culmination, gives you an opportunity to be able to see like what I've done with this body. Because I was able to take a body that had an enormous amount of neurological damage. Like literally, if I didn't do flying rainbow lasagna and all of the DIY fixer-upper things that I did to this house, this body form would really only have been in a vegetative state in bed. That is not an exaggeration. That is a literalism. That there was very much profound brain damage that's not only in the language centers, but also in the motor skills. Like the fact that I do my classes now, like while I'm walking on a treadmill, it's just the ultimate kind of example, living example of what is possible in a body. Because yeah, it's truly, thank you for celebrating with me. I will also give so much glory and credit to God, the divine presence, at the capacitations that I received, because I'm doing lasagna and rearranging DNA and making new things possible. What I make possible in me and in others is to get to the information. That is the healing information. It's kind of like there's a blockade. You need something. You need to know how to do something. The DNA is doing this. And in order to fix or heal or achieve longevity, it's like, well, I need to learn this dance step. How do I do it? Where do I learn it from? The information is out there, but you've had a blockade. And the blockade has been largely ancient crapola, ancient genetic modification, ancient assaults on your DNA in its pristine form. Those programs that you're well-meaning, but erroneously error-creating ancestors give to you, where did they get the idea of death from? They didn't just say, like, let me curse the next generation with disease and death. They didn't do that. They got it from their ancestors. Who got it from their ancestors? Who got it from where? They didn't just spontaneously come up with this bad stuff called disease and death. It was programmed into human DNA as part of a suppression agenda. And the flying rainbow lasagna allows me in this body, and by extension, all of you in your bodies, to supersede that suppression agenda. And that really makes me a freedom fighter and also a big giant troublemaker for those who are in alignment with the suppression agenda. They're like, that's Flying Rainbow Lasagna. She's dancing beyond these inborn limitations of even aging, even the sense of saying like, yep, you're going to have only this many years on Earth in a body. And then even if this is how many years you have on Earth in a body, and then this many good years on Earth in a body, it's not even the full quotient. And by the time you figure out what's going on, I was joking about this last week, you're dead. And then you have to try it again. And all of that is disempowerment suppression agenda. And if I'm superseding all of that stuff, that they don't like that very much. They're like, oh, we don't like that lasagna. And then they're like, and the other ones are learning how to lasagna from her. They're like, yeah, it's even worse. She's dancing lasagna, and then they're all dancing lasagna too, because I influence your DNA. And I influence your DNA, and it's reciprocal. The answer is we are all reciprocally influencing one another via our DNA dances, because it is a continuum. Your DNA is an antenna that is a receiver and a sender of subtle energies, waveform presences, intelligence, data, and light. You exist as a node, a calculative node on an enormously complex, giant biological supercomputer that is making a calculation or a computation across time. So it's not just this place here now, it is all the ancient stuff up to this moment now, and then everything radiating forward, and then also parallel convergent timelines. That is what your DNA is doing. And when you are able to change, transform, heal, or transcend in your DNA, it has a big presence on everything around you. So who I am as a waveform presence, Aurora, before I came here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna, everything about my value system is about freedom. So I couldn't come here and be like, okay, I'm going to force you to Flying Rainbow Lasagna. That's why I would stand trying to be like, I have this if you're interested, but I can't like hit you over the head with it, force it down your throat, force feed you lasagna. That's not according to the freedom state of everything that is in the highest dimension. But also, I'm not going to just stand around while someone else forces bad crapola upon you or into your mind, which is what the millimeter waves, subcutaneous pollutions, nano wetware, and really forms of non-escapable mind control have been doing. So you can turn off your TV and not read a bunch of magazines, but it's much, much harder not to inhale the persistent aerosols that are everywhere. And they hijack your antennae and give you a bunch of false information directly mainlined into your cellular data system. And that is totally unacceptable to me. Because I'm like, you're supposed to be in freedom. You're supposed to be able to choose. Lasagna should be on the platter of thoughts. You got a whole big giant banquet, including crap thoughts, and then you've also got lasagna. And what you should have is the opportunity to choose between which types of thoughts you want to ingest and internalize. What are the DNA dances that you want to do? You make your choices and you live by the responsibility of those choices that you have made. That's fair. That is the true example of what cosmic law is. But cosmic law was not being evidenced here. And that made me go like this, like, that is not fair. That's, pardon my French, that's bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. All unfair, all not right, which is why I've now become much more invested in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment events as a planetary protector than I was when I first came here and thought I would leave in 2003 and was really not interested in long-term investments like furniture or anything like that. None of that stuff was really important or a priority to me at all, because I simply thought that what I needed to do was plant the seed of the concept into your minds and make it available to you, and that would be enough. But in light of, or in response to, in recognition of the huge unfairnesses and injustices that were going on here, just making this lasagna concept available to you, not enough. Because you got this other stuff that's literally force feeding you a bunch of lies and crapola and stuff that is you're not even intentionally choosing it. It's environmental and it is technological and something that you're marinating in. And without me being here and clearing away those untruthfulnesses, you wouldn't even have the mental clarity and willpower to be able to make choices. You would have been like a mind-controlled robot slave, kind of like what happened at the end of Atlantis. And again, I have very strong ties to the end of Atlantis. Again, that's kind of a comedy routine there. It's very, very sad. Not funny at all, but I'm using lightheartedness to be able to allude to it. Yeah, very, very horrific tragedy and injustice and unfairness that happened in that realm or in that layer of reality that went very, very badly. And I'm like, that is not going to happen here. That is not going to happen now. There's not going to happen while I am here doing what I am doing. So my time has continually become extended here, and my meaning, purpose, and motivation has continually become expanded, because it's like, okay, it's not enough just to make a sculpture. Well, it's not enough just to make a bunch of imagery, and it's not enough just to internalize the dance, and it's not enough just to make a sculpture. And then, so just like I kind of have to get furniture, I'm also like this. I have to learn how to talk to these people and figure out how to say things properly. I really had to do a ton of self-education and rewiring of my brain to be able to learn words. Like now I talk about harmonics all the time, just as a little aside. I did not know that word. I did not come here knowing that word at all. I made this extensive glass painting. I have a picture that I sometimes share in class. I don't have painting anymore because it broke, but I was showing that at an art show, and someone came up to me and they're like, oh, you're painting harmonics. And I was like this, yes. And I had a little notebook with me and I wrote down like, look up harmonics. And then I would go home and I would literally research these words that people had said to me. I didn't know about any of these things. I didn't know about mitosis. I didn't know about any of these scientific terms. I didn't know about a lot of these things that I'm of course, proceeding on a higher visionary, purely intuitive level. I knew what I was doing with DNA. I knew the dance that I was doing. I didn't have the words to be able to describe in palatable form and integrate with your own educational, academic atmosphere and cosmology and viewpoint of the world. That took me a really, really, really long time. And so I'm doing a little bit of like positive walk down memory lane, because actually last night I rewatched my lessons, stayed up actually till 2 a.m. rewatching my lessons. And there's a lot of emotional pain wrapped up in the creation of the lasagna. It was actually not a huge celebratory event. And it's a very lighthearted word. And also my artwork is super lighthearted, rainbow, and positive. You wouldn't necessarily know it unless I told you that the day of the lasagna was actually like the worst day of my life. It's actually like a horrific, very, very terrifying, epic odyssey of hellish torment. And very, very challenging to be able to get through. And I didn't even have words to be able to describe it to people when I came into this world and came into this body. The emotional processing and description of the incredible, painful, and terrifying things that I had been through in order to create and generate this, I also did not have words for. And it took me many, many years of emotional processing just to be able to think about those events and not be so emotionally overwhelmed by them. It is like being in a war or some kind of an accident, something where something happened that was very sudden, very traumatic, very horrifying, but you went through it. It was definitely the worst day of my life and the best day of my life, because out of that came the genesis of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, which is something so amazing. But I need for you guys to know that it is something that was created, you know, the way that like a blacksmith makes something through this, you know, incredible difficulty and fire and violence. This was created through an enormous amount of pain and suffering and violence. And it came out as this incredible, beautiful tool and force field for freedom and divine connection, but was a very, very, very difficult experience to have to go through, to have to endure, to get through that. So now, like, again, I'm well recovered from it. I have found ways to fix and heal my body so that way I walk, I talk, I sing, I do all these stuff. My memory is pretty good. And also I continue to improve. Like I used to have a lot more difficulties with, let's say, my depth perception, getting both of my eyes to work and integrate. I used to have a lot more difficulties and challenges with language. My spelling is still really bad. My class notes are terrible. I send them out anyway, because that way I just don't have to be too much of a perfectionist. But I admit my grammar and my spelling are not that good. And it's also, I have a lot of difficulty coming up with song titles. I sometimes just call my song titles a series of numbers instead of coming up with actual English words, because it's very, very difficult for me. But all in all, I think I'm doing a pretty amazing job in the body container that I'm in. And there's always tons of room for improvement. And I hold that forward to you because, like, I look at myself as a person who's like an athlete, a spiritual athlete. I'm in recovery from a bad brain injury, for anything that any one of you might have experienced in your body. If it's a disease, an amputation, a brain injury, a pathogen, whatever happened, even birth trauma. Some people come in with a lot of birth trauma, like neurological dysregulation from literally what happened when they were coming out of their mother's womb. Whatever it is, there is divine healing and divine force fields of grace that can bring you back to your ideal form, and never to give up in those efforts, and also to do the best you can with what you have, because that's been my motto throughout all of this. So yeah, I used to not be able to walk very many miles. I used to not be very articulate, and now here's walk down memory lane. So I lived in Woodstock, New York. It's a very, very small kind of bohemian upstate town, not the city at all. And it had this little tiny community access TV channel, because this also goes back to like cable TV. They're like, Aurora, is this 1,000 years ago? No, it's not 1,000 years ago. It's like 2005. But part of the FCC regulations, like when you have cable TV, the bandwidth, they're like, all of this is commercial, all of this is sold for profit, but you have to have this little channel over here that is community access. That is for free for the community. All right. I don't even know what it's like in your communities now. And now everybody just watches YouTube and Netflix, and things are very, very different. But there used to be Channel 23, and their motto was Channel 23, where anyone can be a star. And you could sign up as part of just being a community member and gain access to make your own little TV show. And so initially I was on someone else's little, like, 11 p.m., almost middle of the night, kind of art bohemian TV show with a painter and a sculptor there. And I used to be a part of that. And then someone's like, you should do your own show. And I'm like, this is me. I barely have language skills. I didn't know anything about technology. Now I'm good with technology. That was another thing. I really had to level up a huge amount, because I didn't know about technology. We don't have technology where I come from. And also technology is expensive. And at that time in my life, I was like literally a starving artist. I did not have money for things like computers. No one really had cell phones yet. But I definitely did not have access to technology or know how to use it or anything like that. But I got a middle of the night TV show on Channel 23. And I would go on there with my flying rainbow lasagna sculpture and just try to talk to people about what this is and what this concept is. And through those efforts at trying to articulate, I started to find my voice. I started to find analogies that I could use to talk about these things, to make them accessible to humans through your languaging and through your cultural filters, so that it wasn't like this bizarre, incomprehensible thing. And I found ways to connect with you through like humor and storytelling, and also found ways to be able to speak, finding my words. I mean, I still say things like and duh a lot, but I used to be really a lot worse, because it took a long time for my brain to connect to my mouth. So yeah, it took me a long time. And then also I needed a lot of encouragement, because I was always like, don't worry, like that. I was like, that sucked. That was so bad. But don't worry, it's the middle of the night. No one's watching. And then someone would find me the next day. They'd be like, I saw you on TV last night. And I'd be like, oh no, I saw me on TV. Like, it was good. I liked it. I'd be like, really? I'm going to keep going. I'll do it again. So that's it. This is again, like years before I did these lessons or anything like that. I simply had to try to find a way to communicate to you things that are very abstract and challenging, even, you know, at this point in my development, but also as a total cultural outsider. So I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know a lot of ways. I tried to find movies and TV shows that you could relate to and say, it's like this, or it's like this, or it's this type of a thing like this. And very motivated, again, to be able to perform my mission in sharing that with you. And at that point, also, I was still primarily a visual artist and hadn't really gotten into my music or my formal teaching yet. And it took a long time. So I perfected the lasagna sculptures. And I wish you could see back behind me a little bit better. Let's see if I tilt this and change the lighting a little bit. You can almost see. I know it's hard because the camera is using this as the brightness quotient. If I turn on the light, you might be able to see it better. But this one over here is made of plaster. And then this one over here is made out of wire. And then this one over here is made out of a different type of like a polymer that is kind of like an outdoor durable polymer. But I perfected, as I was perfecting my verbal ability and communication skills, I also learned a lot about art supplies, even got jobs and worked in art supply stores so I could learn about and buy this stuff. And I found different materials and different ways to be able to create the lasagna form. So one thing that you will see when you look at all of my different lasagnas, sometimes I do a simplification where I have just one kind of ski jump or swooping lasagna shape like this. But some of them I have all 7 individual unique layers. And that's really the most accurate. But those sculptures just have taken a lot, they've been a lot more challenging in terms of both the design and materials aspect of being able to be that accurate. So I have one picture that, you know, I share quite a lot of the most accurate lasagna that I've created as a physical form. And that is the one that's woven out of wire and measuring the proportions. So like these proportions are technically not correct. What should be is like this much should be red, and then this much should be orange, and then it should be like a tiny amount of green and an even tinier amount of blue, and then a tiniest amount of violet up at the top. But I simplified it. So please comprehend that this sculpture that I hold in class all the time is a simplification of the form that I use to be able to share this basic truth with you. A big part of the truth of the lasagna is that this place where I'm wiggling my pen is the higher dimension. That this is, I won't call it no space, but it is not a communicative space in this shape. So this shape is the higher dimensional form of this shape. And this shape has a very clear inside and a very clear outside. This shape bridges together the inside and the outside. And I often do this with you, showing you like a little ant walking on the outside surface of this half cone, then is walking on the inside surface of this half cone, and then is walking on the outside surface again without ever me having to pick up my pen from the edge. That the inside becomes the outside and the outside becomes the inside. What I have not articulated for you enough is the sense of what happens at the layer of orange, because you have a little ant walking along on the layer of orange, go, 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 go. And then what happens? Does it plummet to its death? No, it doesn't. What happens is that edge is an interdimensional portal where it pops out of existence there and then pops into existence down here. This space where I'm wiggling my pen does not exist. The little ant traverses that space as if it does not exist. And then it goes along this orange zone over here. And does it pop out of existence, default to its death, go into cosmic toilet? No, it doesn't. It goes through an interdimensional portal that's on that edge right there and pops into existence over here. and then goes across here, pops out of existence, back into existence. So the connectivity in this sculpture happens at the layer of red, which is the layer of physicality and embodiment, and also at the level of violet, which is at the level of divine connection. But all of these other layers that are your subtle body layers, your time body layers in between those levels of the human octave, or those bookends of the human octave, are being affected by this higher dimensional space that is no space, that is the abstract nature of what I create and generate when I do this oscillation. So this oscillation, I love talking about it as pure abstraction. Just you learning that changed your DNA. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching my video. This is more than just story time about my life and, you know, what it was like to be here in a human body in 2005. This is literally me sharing information with you that changes the nature of what your DNA does. So empowerment teaching, finding out that your DNA is always doing its dance in the form of chromatin, finding out that it does these complex dance behaviors that make different parts of your DNA talk to each other, loops that happen, and then unloop, and then reloop again. That is DNA talking to itself and talking to each other. So science that is your earth science right now has looked at DNA in the sense of a disconnected, you know, series of chemicals that it kind of dissects and weighs everything that is in a sample of DNA while it's in its dead inert form. That would be like saying, I have studied the piano, like a piano that's totally never been played. I cut apart all the strings, I measured all the strings, I weighed how much steel and nickel are present in the metal strings and what type of wood the piano bench is made out of. I know everything there is to know about piano, but you've never actually heard a jazz quartet or a Mozart sonata, anything played on the actual piano. That is a direct analogy of how humans have perceived and studied DNA up until this point. That you've been taking the constituent elements of DNA, cutting them apart and weighing them and looking at them in indirect ways, but not looking at DNA when it's in its actual complex dance maneuvers, because DNA changes. It changes. It's not always the same. It's not always representing the same amount of information. And the things that make it change, it is influenced, is a better way of saying it. There are things that influence DNA that are pure thought forms. So your observership, your expectations of reality, your own cosmology and viewpoint about what is possible in reality, all of that influences the picture of reality that DNA is painting as it is doing its dance. So humanity needs to level up with their scientific equipment and be able to perceive DNA in its natural form, in its alive multidimensional form, responding to different directives and incentives and impulses, and then be able to make a real assessment of what DNA is doing by that. And guess what? You know, you don't have to actually build a scientific apparatus to do that. You've already got one. It's just you got to awaken it from its dormancy. It's called your inner eye. It's called your pineal gland. It's called Christ consciousness. And it is part of the multidimensional higher sensory apparatus that you use to see through time. Because every time you learn something new, your DNA starts acting in a new way. Every time. This is big stuff. So your DNA can learn a new dance, again, that dances you over a cliff. You're dead. Or your DNA can learn something that is a new dance, that is a life-sustaining dance, that continues to keep your body alive and move you in positive directions. So they can give you a dance that's like the dance of your dead. It says, you've got this terrible disease, and then it's going to do this, and then you're going to fall over and die. And that teaches your DNA to dance you in those directions. but then you can receive a different directive that says, you have the potential for this disease. And if you do this and this and this, and if you dance with your life in this way, you do these, modify your behavior, live your life differently, think and feel different things, your DNA will literally align with different reality structures, and big key point, emanate and generate different reality structures. So you're not merely actors and actresses on a stage playing according to the cosmic script. You can be like, F this SHIT. I don't like this cosmic script. It involves me getting diseases and going over a cliff and being your dead. I think I'll write a different, better story. And you're also the script writer. And that is what Flying Rainbow Lasagna actually does. I'm going to talk about the particularities of how to do that next week in terms of what this is actually doing on a genetic level, because Flying Rainbow Lasagna acts upon you or influences you in a variety of ways. It acts upon you as an art form, a concept, or a cultural precept. It acts upon you. So like, it's an idea, it's a thought form. You learn about it and internalize it. Boom, your DNA is changed. I'm doing it as my own constant, oscillative, unique dance in time. I'm changing you in exactly the same way that we're all reciprocally affecting one another. But then also through all of that, you have your subtle bodies, your chakras, your time body that is ordinarily shaped like this with your singularity as the central convergence point. And what you can do is begin to oscillate the singularity that is inside of you, present in your body, present in your nuclei of your cells, present in your own pineal gland here. And you can oscillate it in these complex patterns that creates this Flying Rainbow Lasagna shape, including this place where I'm wiggling my finger that is a higher dimensional space with no space. And that is a positive thing that you want to do, because big takeaway, every time you gain an additional dimension, you gain an additional degree of freedom. So if you're a little ant and you're two-dimensional, you're walking on the surface of a leaf, you have a certain amount of freedom, but not total freedom. But if you're a butterfly, you can jump off the surface of the leaf and fly over to here, or fly to a completely different leaf. You have a greater level of freedom. Humanity has been in bodies that have limited and limiting genetic behavior that makes you stuck to the surface of time, where you experience time in a linear sense. First breakfast, then lunch, then dinner. And you have to walk through every single moment of those experiences in order to get to dinner. What if you want to skip this area? Like, I don't want to do lunch, I just want to skip it and go directly to dinner. You would have to fly Rainbow Lasagna or achieve a greater level of a degree of freedom to be able to either jump off the surface of time and fly directly there, or stand in one place and fold the surface of space-time continuum and consciousness to meet you. That is the great empowerment teaching of Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So Flying Rainbow Lasagna, when you are changing and transforming on a genetic level and on your energy field level, on the one hand, it's changing your protein structures. That's like avoiding diseases like cancer. On the next level, it's creating or generating certain events or aligning with new certain event reality structures, all right? That's recognizing that your DNA is a bridge of light between yourself as a physical, somatic, cellular being and the potentials of time itself. And then you're also rearranging your experience of time into a nonlinear pattern. I time travel all the time. I have this magical armchair that I sit in. It's kind of like this, relaxation chair with this rainbow, kind of canvas seating area. I sit in my magic lawn chair is what I'm trying to say. My magical lawn chair that you can get at Bed Bath & Beyond. It's not like an expensive H.G. Wells time travel machine. It's a lawn chair. I sit in one space-time coordinate, but what I do is I oscillate aspects of myself into and out of, in a very complex pattern, the reality structures and DNA structures of many different time places, some of which might be tens of thousands of years ago, some of which be potentials in the future that are not even yet time places according to your definition of time place. And I do all of that beautiful oscillating with myself in this time place as an epicenter. And that's what my lasagna dance really is. So I do share with you my dance on Tuesday mornings. I didn't do that for a long amount of time. And I hope that my personal sharing of this presentation today is getting across to you the sense of like, I've been evolving as an ego state and as a person and who I am in response to you as a group of humans, you as a culture of humans. And I've had to grow. Like when I've been lasagnaing the whole entire time that I've been here. For the greatest proportion of time, it has been an innate, unstudied, just totally non-self-conscious, very private activity that I just do lasagna time. And not necessarily something that I would be like, hey, you over there, like, watch me do the lasagna. That was actually something that I didn't think to do for a very, very long amount of time. What actually happened was I was always doing the lasagna and always doing my own private lasagna dancing and practice and oscillation throughout the day. And as I started to teach about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna in 2012, so that was, again, another time when it's like me and I think a lot of other people thought like, okay, like, are we still going to be here? Are we not going to be here? What is reality going to be shaped like? Everyone thought it might be the end of the world or a hugely transformative day of existence. And on that day, the world did not evaporate. Furniture remained relevant. Computers remained relevant. And I was like, okay, I am going to call myself professor in air quotes and develop a curriculum and start formally sharing these ideas. Because what I used to do was middle of the night TV show. And then also when people would come to my small art studio, I would be like, so happy to have a visitor. Let me inundate you with all of these ideas, tell them all about lasagna until their eyes glazed over. And so in December 21st of 2012 is when I decided like, okay, we're still here. People still need to know about this. I need to level up. I'm going to start like making a class and start a formal curriculum. And that was what I did in order to be able to share these ideas with humanity in a more comprehensive sense. I had to learn how you guys learn because I didn't know about that at all. So I literally had to learn, like, you can't just be like, okay, here's how you learn a song, guys. That's the song. Now do it. Because you're intimidated. And you have to be like, here's the first part of the song. Here's the second part of the song. Here's the next part, the next part. Now let's fit all these things together. You have to break it up into manageable increments. I didn't know that because I didn't go through your human education system as you guys did. So I had to learn how you learn and then create a curriculum that is based on these incremental building blocks so that you could then culminate in lasagna and actually do it yourself. So first what I'm doing is I'm talking to your intellect. And as I'm talking to your intellect and you're gaining these building blocks of comprehension about like, you have chakras and this is what the rainbow means. And this is what the layers of your body mean. And all of the different topics that I've been teaching you throughout the semester. At a certain point, people would always be like, okay, Aurora, like, you're always talking about the lasagna. Like, can we actually do it? And I would be like, well, yes, of course you can do it. But I still didn't really share my dance with people. And that was not until like really 2019 or so that I got together a small group of trusted individuals. And I used to dance in my garage, my old place, just like this unfurnished garage, just had enough space. And it wasn't very hot inside of there. Because where I live, it's just like it's 100 degrees out today. And put down a carpet. And because my dance is a lot of floor work, you don't go through interdimensional portals like walking on two legs like this. You dive and roll through interdimensional portals and kind of come out the other side. So it's a very different biomechanics, kinetics. The way that you use your body is very differently. And it's really a preparation for you floating in an n-dimensional space that is not like walking on a gravity-based three-dimensional world. That is what you're used to. So I didn't even know how to share it with people. But I just said, like, look, I'll share my dance with you, go through like my stretching routine and my warm-up routine, and then show you what I do. And so again, through sharing that with people over several different classes over many, many years, I developed the articulation to be able to say to people like, oh, these are what you're doing. Like, you're going through a portal. This is how you roll through a portal. Like, you go through with your body, you roll through. Or like, this is how you create these figure eights with your body. But all of these body movements are totally intuitive movements that I am constantly guided to make, because what's really happening is you're flying through time. You're submerged in time. And when you make either different hand motions, which you guys actually see me dance all the time with my hands. All of these motions are non-random, and they're connected completely to the activity of your DNA, which your DNA is always, like I said, splicing itself, unsplicing itself, twisting itself around, untwisting itself around, doing a back bend, straightening out. It does all of these things, and it does that just as an ordinary part of your regular mundane existence. Like, you drive to the store, you buy oranges at the grocery store, and your DNA is doing these amazing acrobatics internally the whole entire time. The key with lasagna is being able to dance into these more connected, greater perception level states that are very elated and very exalted, where you move beyond verbalism, because verbalism is a hack. It's a hack on your human operating system. We talked about Carlos Castaneda, active inside infinity, the flyer's mind, the predator's mind, and the predator's verbalization mind. That is one of those inhibitory structures that has been placed into humanity to kind of keep you out of those levels of reality. And I am doing everything I can to be able to be the world's biggest troublemaker and make those levels of reality accessible to you, and also instill you with good values, so that when you are in those purely creative states, you're not going to be generating reality from, like, a hugely selfish or perturbing, destabilizing the entirety of the fabric of space-time. That would be wrong if I did that. So I have to, if I'm going to give you car keys and give you driving lessons, I have to also teach you like the proper value system of, like, yeah, like, you don't want to hurt other people. You don't want to crash into things. You want to create correct, positive, life-affirming reality structures. So this is not just a dance where you're transforming your DNA and then oscillating and moving through time and gaining more genetic freedom. You do it according to very specific patterns. And the patterns are what's in my artwork, and the patterns are what I teach you in this class. I also have a little drawing class that I've taught everyone, like getting circle templates, learning the proportions, fitting all this stuff together. This is like divine language. This is God's language. Wait, I have to start my treadmill again because it stops after a certain amount of time. It's divine languaging that is part of a larger consensual reality. That's actually not just my small proprietary thing that I made up. That's like the music of the cosmos that predates me as Aurora flying rainbow lasagna. That's cosmic law. I teach you guys about cosmic law. I teach you about the accuracy of the dance and what you are trying to do when you hold your body in certain physical skeletal forms, or move your arms or your fingers in certain skeletal forms. You are also aligning with certain time forms and abstractions in time, because you know that your sacred geometry is what you call yourselves, and people have it all tattooed on themselves now, but you know that there are sacred proportions that are innate in, like, your bone structure, your cellular structure, even in your process of metabolism, even though science probably would never recognize it, but you have a ton of mathematical perfection in even the process of metabolizing glucose. Like, I ate a bunch of cookies before I started here because I'm doing a marathon here on the treadmill. Hey, I make my own healthy cookies. That's good stuff. But there's glucose in there. And the way that my cells and my mitochondria are accessing that glucose and turning it into physical kinetic energy and words coming out of my mouth, that's not random. It's all very, very, it is prescribed dance movements on a cellular level, down to the level of an electron. That is how specific these dance movements are. You know, like how ballerinas, like they put their toes and they're like, boink, like that's exactly where my toe is supposed to go. And, you know, they're very accurate. The mitochondria are that way. They're like electron, doink, that's exactly where it's supposed to go. Or any of these little things, any of the things that what your cell membranes are doing, what your stem cells are doing, because we have to get into DNA as something that is not just a replicator replicating from your generation as a parent into your offspring to keep your species alive. Your DNA is also a replicator in terms of your cells creating new cellular generations. And that's how it really relates to you, no matter whether you are a parent of a physical child or not. You have mother cells in your body, parent cells, that then subdivide into offspring, daughter cells. And all the information that's in the cell membranes of the parent cell gets replicated and passed on to the daughter cell. So let's say I was just walking with my friends in the beautiful, having a beautiful hike on an early morning this morning, walk past some poison ivy, right? Let's say one cell of your body gets exposed to poison ivy and has a whole reaction, a whole series of biochemical reactions and inflammatory responses happen, blah, 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 and then it heals from it. Then that cell subdivides into the next generation. That whole entire experience of poison ivy or stinging nettles or whatever it was that you got exposed to, that stimulus, is recorded and passed down in the tendencies of the cell membrane to the daughter cells. And then when this cell grows and then gets big enough to subdivide again, it's still going to pass down that story of the day that you got exposed to poison ivy or stinging nettles or whatever it was. These stories and the event cascades that you experience are not only stored in your brain, in your cognitive, that you're consciously aware of, cognitive processes, it is also stored up in your metabolic processes of what your cells are doing, and your cells pass on that information to the next generation, they replicate. And so this is big because you came here as a little tiny baby, dance my cosmic dance, everything is amazing. Then someone taught you about death and you danced a dance that was less amazing. And that might have been when you were like, whatever, 1 or 2 years old or 5 years old. Now you're 35 or 55, and that information that you internalized, that you were stimulated by way back then, has been passed along through these subdivisions into your present cellular structure. In order for you to truly be free, you have to dance a new story pattern through all of your story structures of the membranes of your body. Your nuclear membranes, your cell membranes, mitochondrial membranes, 3 important membranes, and also the fascia, the muscular coverings and organ coverings of your body. This is where information is stored in your body, even beyond your DNA. Your DNA is information storage capacity. Sorry, that's one of the examples of like my brain not working with my mouth. Your cells of your body and your fascia represent information storage capacity, even beyond what you cognitively store or what you store in the sense of your DNA, because the dance of your DNA is not only something that is a blueprint for what color your eyes are, it is also a record of what you've learned to get exposed to up until this point. Big, big, big stuff, because this is stuff that you got from your ancestors. You got a lot of crap from your ancestors, but you also got some good stuff from your ancestry in terms of you being part of a continuum of consciousness and biological information transfer system. That information is transferred from previous generations to future generations and onward and onward and onward, and that is part of a culminative event. These calculations mean something. And so now, as a brief aside, there's a lot of stuff I don't openly talk about on YouTube, but I allude to it I clutch my pearls, the unmentionables, the things that are sometimes done to subcutaneously pollute people so that the RNA messengers are bringing a different type of message to the DNA that is not from your ancestors, not from the sun and the stars, not from divine factory settings, really not from anything that is positive or life affirming at all, and would represent non-signal or a genetic pollution. Your DNA is part of a larger architecture of carrying information across time. That information is incredibly valuable. Like when you put something in your safe deposit box, you're not like, I put those diamonds in the safe deposit box. Like, who really effing cares? You're like, I care about them a lot. It's why I put them in the safe deposit box. The information that has been placed onto the DNA blockchain, for lack of a better word, is so unbelievably valuable. And the calculative performances that are happening in the interplay of DNA is so important and so valuable to the consciousness presences that put the information there, that they're like, oh, subcutaneous pollutions, not okay. Just like someone smashing into your lockbox, smashing all your diamonds. I put those diamonds in there because they're valuable to me, not so that I could put them in there so that someone could come along and smash them up and F them up and make it bad. Information that is in your own body, in your own DNA, in its architecture, in its arrangement of protein structures, and in its behavior. It's priceless. Priceless. And we're talking about more than a mere bank heist of materiality here. We're talking about a criminal activity that is affecting multiple timelines, across time, across dimensionality, across generations. This isn't just a folly that involves one little species in a backwater planet that will end in your own eventual swirling down the cosmic toilet or death or, you know, end of your species. That's not what it is. That if it were that, it would be like, dun, 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 they died, who cares? This is big stuff, big criminal stuff, and not even folly, because it's not like, oh, like they were so dumb and they did this to themselves, and then they were like, stop throwing your poop into our dimension, you know, like they're stupid, they're doing that. No, it's being done to you. It's actually being done to you. It's being perpetrated against you. It is a cosmic crime of magnificent scale. You would be impressed by it, except it's horrific. Don't be impressed by it. But like that's like the world's most giant turd. Like, don't be impressed by it, but it is big caca poo-poo and very, very bad and very, very criminal. And you kind of, I think, hopefully understand, like, for some people, it's like, go big or go home. Like, they're going to do the biggest crime possible and think like, it's a crime that's so big, like, what, you know, some like thinking that somehow they're going to evade capture or response. But instead, what happens is the entirety of all life everywhere and all consciousness must be mobilized against this. Must mobilize against it, must mobilize in response to this enormous criminality. So you can feel like it's a big giant criminal syndicate, a big giant mafia, and everybody's corrupt, and it's so corrupt like there's no way out. But I really tell you that is not what's truthful. What's truthful is it is such a crime on such a grand scale and such a grand magnitude. You must have justice. You must have law enforcement. Because if you don't have law enforcement, you essentially don't have reality structure anymore. If this gets allowed to happen, this is not responded to effectively, you don't get to have a reality anymore. You don't get to have time or matter or existence anymore. That is a very, 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 very big crime. So that is literally what you guys are all living through. And in coming here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna and living as Aurora, at least for the first 18 years or so of my existence here, I did not know or expect that that would be the series of events that I would be lasagnaing through. Again, thought my gig would be done in 2003. And then eventually I became a lot more culturally invested. And then eventually, as I started to see what was going on here genetically, I'm like lasagnaing, and there's like a lot of criminal activity happening here. And at a certain point, I'm like, I am going to have to do more than just lasagna. I do me, you do you. I put these concepts on a platter and share them with you, and you choose whether or not you internalize them. I had to and have had to level up and be a lot more directly active, directly influencing of events, directly influencing of other human beings and organisms' biological architecture and being here. Again, because I'm like, wow, if I don't do that, there's nothing. If I don't do that, cosmic toilet swirl. If I don't do that, then all of this stuff is kaput. So I have ended up becoming uniquely situated in order to be able to do these things that were not necessarily something that I originally came here intending to do, but which I will always rise to the occasion. That's the best way I can say this. In fact, let me just drink a little bit more water. But I would say that even my initial lasagnaing and creating of the lasagna form felt to me very much like being drawn into a battle from the position of being a bystander. That I felt like I was an observer, but not a participant. And that it wasn't even technically my job to lasagna and intervene in this way. And that, just like I talked to you about, if you saw someone was going to teeter perilously and then fall into the deep end, but you're like, but I'm not a lifeguard. And, you know, it's not my job. And I haven't signed a non-disclosure agreement. And I don't have swim fins and I don't have a jet ski and I don't have this and I don't have that. And you're just like, but that guy over there, he's going to fall in and he's going to die if I don't do something. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do something. Yeah, I have to. And that's it. It is a defining moment in your soul's progress if you choose to dive in and do something. And I chose to literally dive into this body, this reality structure, this social continuum to do something here. And I have, you know, I actually don't have ambivalence. I actually don't have regrets, even though it is often like a very, very difficult life situation. Just like regular life situation was not really that difficult. I did eventually figure out the washing machine and different soaps for different body parts because I didn't know about that either. It's like, you know, actually, like your hair requires a completely different soap than your teeth, than your face. They're all kind of in the same world. They're all in your head, but they all need different types of soap. And that stuff I mastered pretty well. But the things that have been the most challenging have been within the past 5 years, as they've created more of these synthetic telepathy networks. That has been an absolute torture for me because I'm telepathic and empathic, and I hear and feel the thought form, cognitive thought forms and feeling states of the people around me. And as more synthetic telepathy was created, more genetic mutilation was forced upon the population, or people participated in it willingly or unwittingly or wittingly. As more of that happened, and there became much more distortion and noise and much less divine connection, I hear all of that stuff, bad music, and it became very, very difficult for me to be like, I'm doing my lasagna dance and playing my cool music, because I hear all of this bad music of death and disease and impending catastrophe based on death and disease of all these other people. And there's really not a way to be like, dancing my lasagna, keeping happy. You can't do that. You just can't do that. It really, it affects you. So this has been really stretching the boundary or testing that boundary. In cosmic laws lived in life. It's not something that is done like with a powdered wig guy and a gavel in a mere abstraction. It's testing the boundary of freedom, where it's like, okay, I do me, you do you, let's do it. Be like, I'm doing me and they're all doing them. And that's all really torturous, because at a certain point you are encouraged to set an appropriate boundary of what you will and what you will not accept as things affect you in your own life. So yeah, like let's say you live next door to your garbage, you live next door to a neighbor, and your neighbor has a giant pile of garbage in front of their lawn. And of course, like the rats run into your yard. It's not just their garbage is affecting you. And then at a certain point, like let's say it's like a giant pile of tires and they decide to light the tires on fire and plumes of black smoke are coming through your whole neighborhood. You can't just be like, well, I do me, you do you, enjoy your giant tire fire because the smoke is coming into your whole entire community. That's direct analogy what's happening here on the planet. You don't just have people who are doing folly with their DNA. You don't just have people who are doing something that's not good in their own body or with their own little individual life. You have people that are doing something that affects and afflicts the entirety of all DNA, your whole entire planetary community, your whole entire ecosystem, the ecosystem of time itself, the black cloud of smoke that comes from the tire fire. It's literally going across time and dimensionality. It's not okay for anyone. So again, this really requires a huge amount of elucidation or looking at the structure and the validation of the concept of freedom. What are you free to do and what are you not free to do? And what is the freedom state? And what happens when what you're doing is harming others or other people around you or causing huge amounts of negative repercussions? That freedom state means like, yep, you're free to do you, but we are not free to experience your train wreck. We get to say, no, we don't like this big giant cloud of black smoke that you're creating. So then it becomes absolutely appropriate to act. And also it's a big giant thing that's going on. So it's not like, okay, great. Like you can have one tiny little wimpy capacitation. You must act, be empowered to act on a much greater level. So all of a sudden you like become a cosmic bulldozer where you're like, I'm going to bulldoze that giant tire fire because I can't let it happen. I can't do these things. I didn't know about any of these things, that they would be the eventualities of my choice to flying rainbow lasagna. And largely who I am as a person here and who I am as Aurora, a waveform, although I am incredibly responsible and focused on community action and caring for others, my real motivation is self-expression, like the beauty of art and music. That's a universal personality characteristic for me, whether I am a waveform in an abstract presence on the stellar network or whether I'm embodied here as a human woman. I'm like, I make things that are beautiful. I do that in order to inform and uplift others. I'm a communicator. I do things that impact the world in what would be considered like art, beauty, dance, aesthetics, uplift, all of these things. And that hasn't been enough in this circumstance. And I've also had to become very much direct in my action at preventing violence, sometimes using defensive violence. I'm talking about psychic violence here, energetic violence, protecting others. I've had to become that in order to maintain a world where you can even have a flying rainbow lasagna, when you can even have art and music as an expression, where you can even have the pristine, free expression of DNA and of what it is. So also my dance has had to change also. So, you know, what the dance that I did up until 2017 was its own thing. And then as circumstances and synthetic telepathy got to be a lot worse, my dance had to change because I had to be a lot more like constantly blockading things, constantly being defensive. I'm not sure if I'm describing this well. Because my dance creates events in time. And so I've had to do more than just be like, I'm generating and I'm free and I'm dancing and I'm creating events in time. Because as I'm creating events in time, something is coming along and being like, stop creating those events in time, or I'm going to hijack or diminish or distort these events in time. And so then I've had to be like, okay, like let's put all these protective force fields around that dance that I'm doing and then keep on dancing. And then it's like, I don't like your protective force fields. And then at a certain point, it has directly come into my life in the form of this wetware and these nano pathogens, and be like, that's it, taking over your body, no more lasagna dancing for you. And of course I'm like not agreeing with that at all, and that is its own huge cosmic crime. And that is what happened really roughly 2 years ago, along about the same time that you had huge cultural shifts, which again, I don't talk about directly on this particular platform, but which I talk about on, very openly in other contexts and places, those huge cultural shifts that were actually part of a hard invasion on your planet. Like it's your entire government, economic system, behavioral control systems, technology, all of that being completely taken over, being completely weaponized against you and your consciousness in a sense of a complete agenda to diminish your free will, turn you into robot slaves. And I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen. But then they also were like, you, especially troublemaker, you're not going to do the flying rainbow lasagna anymore. I'm sharing this very lightheartedly with you, but it was, again, horrific and harrowing. And I had to fight my way to freedom to be able to keep doing this. That is where we stand now. That now I've regained my health and my free will and my capacitation in spite of their attempts to kill me, inhibit my genetic behavior, stop me from being a waveform, stop me from existing, stop me from inhabiting a physical human form, stop me from having articulation and being able to share with you, or stop me from being able to do my flying rainbow lasagna activities through these, like you could call the millimeter wave, you could call it an anti-lasagna wave. That's what this is. They literally put up a whole entire anti-lasagna force field on this planet to stop this activity from happening. The good news is that the lasagna continues. The lasagna continues because the whole entire genesis of lasagna, and this is part of my Flying Rainbow Lasagna Manifesto, which I, again, jokingly laugh at, calling it that, but please read it. You can find it in the PDF that I always share, and you can also find me reading it in various different video formats of oration. Cosmos augments itself by necessity. It's one of the basic precepts of why I Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Why did this event happen? It actually didn't just happen from my personal whim or personal convenience. My survival, drive, and need to rectify the cosmic fabric of space-time is totally in alignment with the cosmos as a living being and time as a living being, having its own motivation to continue to be in existence, to not devolve or fall apart or become a series like a tapestry where all the threads get pulled out and it loses structural integrity. The fabric of time wants to stay alive. Divine architecture wants to stay alive. These things have their own agenda that my activities and my agenda mesh perfectly with, not just my personal whim or convenience, something that I did that definitely helps and serves me, also helps and serves the entire structure of that which sustains and upholds my existence, and also serves every single one of you in making those levels of greater additional degrees of freedom, making those degrees of freedom available to you. That's really the big thing here. I do lasagna, and I have figured out various different ways to continually self-augment in response to huge levels of injustice and criminality in this world. And it's not just for me, it's also for you. So I did the initial lasagna, and I'm like, I can teach other people and share and model for them how to do this. And then every single thing that they've thrown at me, and they've thrown the kitchen sink at me, I'm like, okay, I figured out a way to either transform or supersede or fight against it or respond to it effectively. And then I radiate and broadcast that out. I'm like, beep, 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 beep. Here's the solution, guys. Here is the genetic response to the insults and assaults and attacks that are being done to you as an individual organism, as a species, social dynamic collective, as a planetary ecosystem, as a soul continuum of consciousness. Things that I do to protect and defend myself, you get to take it and run with it. Hey guys, I just wrote a new song, what to do in response to nano crapola. I hope you like it. Please take it and sing it and make it your own and run with it and apply it to your own life and play it with your own instrumentation. That is literally what I do with my presence here all the time. And then also, I'm not just going to dump this huge level of responsibility on all of you, because it is recognized that you're in the beginning stages of your own development. I'm backbending in here, and I'm a grad student, and I've already really done a lot of these lessons. For you, this is a first time. And trying to ascend through all of this poop crapola and these inhibitory waves, almost impossible. Huge difficulties. So I'm also here in order to try to make things as fair and accessible and as possible as possible. I want to make things as possible, if that makes sense to you. Because otherwise the difficulty level would be so much to be like I'm trying to lift 100 pounds. It's like you need time to lift a 5-pound weight and then work up to 100 pounds and you will get there. It's just a little bit too much to dump straight on you. So I can be like, okay, like here's this genetic solution, throw them over my shoulder, like I'm running fast. But also I do a lot of direct protection and interaction with you and your body forms, so that you're not just completely alone, like have to figure out some way to, do all these things. Like, I'm giving you tools. I want you to know I'm not just like, here's a tool, here's a tool, here's a tool. Like, see you, sucker. I'm on to the next thing. I send out all those genetic tools to you, and then I'm very invested in your own body architecture, but not in an invasive way. Because here's the thing, like, there's all these different really malevolent consciousnesses or consciousness structures that have been violators in your world. Planet's been violated many times. Genetic code's been violated many times. You might have been violated in your mind, your body, or your sexual presence. You don't need any more violations. You don't need even a well-meaning person to be like, oh, let me just come along and do that for you. I know you've already had your boundaries crossed, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to do this. I'm a good guy. I have to exemplify to you with my behavior that I am trustworthy, that I respect your boundaries, that I respect your freedom. And so even amidst all of this, I still look for consent. I still offer things in consent. I'm like, something, I'm going to clear out all these lies from your body. I'm going to clear out this false architecture. I'm going to clear out this pollution and corruption. I'm not going to put a bunch of my own stuff in there that's a convenience to me. I'm going to clear out the stuff that other criminals have placed into you, and I'm going to make it possible for you to reconnect to your own divine architecture, make your own choices. That is what a truly good, truly upstanding in value system, organism, or collective, or group of beings would do, will do, and is or are doing for you in all that I represent. And that way you have a qualitative difference, a barometer that you can use in order to be able to sense, well, that's all like that really bad criminal crapola stuff that's over there. That's doing that. And it's literally trying to invade your body. Nanites, pathogens. You didn't ask them to come inside of you. They forced their way out to this planet. They forced their way into your biology, forced their way into your neurology, forced their signals and invalid mind states into your mind. And I clear a lot of that stuff away. Again, that was not my original purpose for being lasagna and being here. That's more like cosmic scrub brush type of stuff. But toilet needs to be scrubbed. And I scrub it out. And then I leave it nice and clean. And then I shouldn't call it the toilet because it's your mind. Clean out your DNA architecture and a bunch of other aspects of your biology so that you can choose what you want to imprint. You can choose what you want to align with. You can choose your personal self-expression and your genetic expression and what is the highest reality state you can generate. So today's a perfect example. And some people are like, October 4th, they're telling me to be afraid. It could be the zombie apocalypse. I'm afraid. And I'm like, you don't have to agree to that narrative story structure. That narrative story structure is literally a dance movement that your DNA is doing. You can dance a completely different story structure that is your reality creation. What's going to happen in your life? First of all, what is your body going to be shaped like and be experiencing in the sensory realm? What is your day going to be shaped like in terms of the events of you moving through time? What is the context of your life and whom you interrelate with? Your planet, other species, your daily activities, your architecture of your life. And then what is the longer term offshoot or culmination of all of this, which according to all of your ancestors, the dance of death, you're going to die. That doesn't have to be the end of this story that you are writing. I want to be like, here's a paintbrush. Here's a paintbrush of reality. Take it. And I want you to paint good stuff. You get to choose. I want you to paint a body where you're super healthy and super athletic and you transcend all these disease programs. And I want you to paint a body also where you transcend chronological aging programs, in the sense that like you can't be strong, healthy, or athletic moving into your older age. That throw those all out the window, paint a better picture of what is the potential of your body. Paint a better picture in terms of human economy. You actually have all of the resources you need in this world to thrive, for all of your inhabitants to thrive. You have to paint a better picture of your social dynamics and your economy. That means, well, you're going to have to paint a better picture of like your government and the way that you have power structured in your world. And then you're going to have to paint a better picture in terms of the events of what you do instead of just dying and then either getting recycled again and coming back as another form, or flinging offward and going elsewhere, see ya suckers, I'm on to the next cosmic assignment. All of those are things that I want you to write a better story of. I want you to find your own voice. So I'm the type of art teacher where I'm not like, okay, like I paint with purple. I want you to paint with purple. I only do complex geometrics, no florals. I'm like, no, if you want to paint a bunch of flowers, paint a bunch of flowers. If you want to paint using whatever, black and gray and white, only shades of monochromatic black and white, you can do so. I want you to find your own self-expression. I want you to dance your unique genetic code. And that's a big part of what I teach in this class intellectually and in the actual dance movement class that I teach and share on Tuesdays to a small group of trusted people. So I use my body in certain movements when I do my dance. People's bodies are shaped differently. Some people are differently capable than others. And there's not a hierarchy of bestness or value in this. Because in the world of like ballet and gymnasts and stuff like that, like you must be able to do this, otherwise you're not as good. This person can do this better than you. This is not an ego competition type of dance. This is the type of dance where you are uniquely celebrated for what you can do. You were born in this place and you've been moving through time in this way. That is unique to you. It's your soul's journey. The injuries and amputations and diseases and limitations that you've had are unique to you. Everybody's got something. And then your transcendence of those limitations is also your own unique dance of triumph. Everything that I'm doing when I want to give you this paintbrush is to give you the capacitation to be in total freedom and to paint your own greatest masterpiece, which is your life. The story of your life, the story of you coming into being, remembering that you're God, remembering your empowerment, remembering the things that you can do and make, and creating achingly beautiful structures of rectification and healing in your life and in your relationships and in what you do every day until you're in a paradise state, until you're in a never-ending paradise state. Not the story of going off a cliff and then you're dead. The story of you stay alive, heal your whole entire world, and exist in a paradise state. That's that painting that you can barely see because of the lighting, but that's what that represents. Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. A complete new birth of a reality structure where you are an empowered writer or author. You are the author of reality. Of course, you're in divine connection and you are God and you're remembering that you're God. So it's not like some kind of ego usurpation or whatever negative inverse of that truth. You really knowing that you're God and you're submerged in your own creation reality, and you take care of your creation, you love your creation, and you bring it into beautiful exalted states. And that's what paradise is. All of these organisms, not only you humans, and I'm in a human container, I'm talking to mostly humans, but my DNA and my flying rainbow lasagna dance laterally affects all of the DNA on this planet. Everything from a tiny microbe to a giant tree to the planet herself. I am doing this dance in order to encourage and empower all of the organisms here to come into that level of remembrance and self-empowerment. Oh yeah, like I'm God and I want to get SHIT done. I can do stuff and do positive stuff, because all of the things that they really taught you with their clunky dance, they taught you like, you're not God, you're gonna get old, you're gonna die, go over a cliff. And I'm like, no, flying rainbow lasagna. Remember that you're God. Remember all of these capacitations that you have. Remember that you can do all of this stuff. Remember that you can invent something new. That literally, when you do the flying rainbow lasagna dance, it's like any of your mythologies that is the thing that gives you some empowerment. So maybe in the past, it was the myth of Aladdin's lamp, a magical lamp that when you rub it, a genie will emerge and you can make wishes. Or the Green Lantern's ring. You know, you put on this ring and then anything you imagine you can manifest and you can make happen. This is what I'm talking about. And those are really your innate superpowers. What the flying rainbow lasagna does is transcends genetic limitations and puts you in touch again with your innate superpowers. And your innate superpowers are profound superpowers of healing your own body, telepathy, empathy, this communication that's nonverbal and non-local, telekinesis, moving matter with your mind, generating matter with your mind. You're already doing these things, but you are not doing them consciously. And it's very, very different. Like if I just tied a paintbrush to somebody's tail and they just kind of like, wagged their tail and made paintings unconsciously, that's very, very different than specifically having a paintbrush and being like, I make these tiny little details and I do this on purpose. And this goes here and this goes here. When you are empowered in what you're doing in reality creation, you make these very specific things happen, not by accident, very much on purpose. You paint your reality structures. You can sense from all of these things that I've shared with you here today, how amazing that is to be living at that level. You can sense why the agenda would be to suppress that in you, to tell you, you're gonna die, you're gonna grow old and get fat and decrepit. Sorry, fat people. Your body, instead of saying that, saying like your body's going to degrade and get worse over time and you won't be able to do stuff and then you're going to die. And instead that you have these things that you can do that are completely, pretty much diametrically opposite of those things, that they wouldn't want you to know that you can do those things, including that you can write out of existence and erase from existence the nanopathogens. That's one of the deepest teachings of flying rainbow lasagna. We're coming to the culmination of this particular class today. So I'll talk to you about the specifics of what your DNA is doing and the specifics of entropy. And I'll get to all of the questions and beautiful comments that I haven't really just been focusing on because I've kind of just been in my groove. But the sense of entropy, which would be like the great giant eraser, erasing the stuff that shouldn't be in existence. Got a bunch of nanopathogens invading DNA itself, creating a giant tire fire with black smoke over your whole entire community. Entropy, you can erase it. It is one of the greatest empowerment tools that it is possible to utilize or employ, or if I'm using art analogies, I give you a paintbrush, but I don't just give you a paintbrush. I'm also going to give you a rag soaked in turpentine that you can use to wipe out stuff that you don't like from your painting. And that is a big part of what it is to be a painter. Like, oh, I'm going to paint this part over here. That looks like crap. Wipe it out. Or somebody else painted this thing. I just got here. This is big also, because that's how I kind of feel in my life. Like I come into this ongoing artwork or collaborative sculpture process, and I'm like, I just got here. This looks like crap. This part needs to change and get fixed. You don't necessarily have to take responsibility for the creation of something that is a malformation to change, fix, heal, or rectify it. I'm going to say that again. You don't have to take responsibility for the genesis of something that is a mutilation or a malformation in order for you to take responsibility for whether you want to unmake it or continue it. You didn't make that bad stuff, but you can fix that bad stuff. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do the facile new age shadow work to say, it's all me, including the poop crapola. Therefore, I can unmake the poop crapola. You don't have to do that, because I don't think that that's accurate. And when you get to these really higher levels of empowerment, accuracy matters. And you can't just agree to a bunch of false precepts and confessions in order to get out of a difficult situation. So if you didn't make that stuff happen, you can't be like, okay, I made that stuff happen. Just get me out of hell. Fix it all up. I made it, like the confession. I confess. I did it all. It was all me. I'll fix it. You don't have to do that, because this is me. I'm here. And I'm like, technically that is not my dirty laundry. I did not do that. That was here when I got here. But instead of saying, it's not my fault, it's not my job, somebody else do it, I'm like, that was somebody else's mess. I am here now. I am fixing it up now. I want to encourage every single one of you to use that as a template. I do that in my body. I'm like, I came into this body. I'm like, I didn't do that. That scar is not from me. It's like a dent in the car. Like, I didn't do it. I'm like, in this car, it's a used car. I'm going to fix it. I'm like, working with human social dynamics. Like, I didn't create that. I didn't generate that. I didn't make that happen, but it's there. Gonna fix it. And that's just the most no-nonsense way of approaching all of these things. I want you to have very practical approaches to behaviorally navigating these very, very challenging and unprecedented series of events and contexts that you're in as a soul. So once again, you don't have to claim ownership of all the things that are bad and wrong in the world, many of which you're not responsible for. But you can be a responsible adult in the sense that you're like, although it's not something I made happen, I'm going to fix it just because I want to live in a world where that crap doesn't exist, because I want to live in a world that is comfortable and good for me, because I want to leave it better for others, because it is the right thing to do. These are all very appropriate because statements. You got it? So I give you all these, like that's actually one of the empowerment teachings where I'm like a tool, because the new age shadow work is so flawed that I'm like, oh God, like I look at that and I'm like, no, that's not right at all. But then I know that the non-rightness of it, I have to send it out to you so that way you don't fall into those traps. So yeah, I've pretty much explored all of the mind traps here, the consciousness intellect traps that are meant to keep people biting their own tails, spinning in a circle of ineptitude so that you never really get any place. And I clear these lies out. I want to get to your comments and questions, but before I do, I have one more thing. I should do actually a whole separate video that is about this, but it is as I'm clearing out lies, and I clear out lies on a very abstract sense of restructuring my body and the waters of my body. I clear them out and I realized I have perpetrated a lie upon you that I have to clarify, that I've been talking about the membrane of death and those beings that set up shop here and have been kind of evading responsibility and even creating power structures where they would be tormentors of the living or tormentors of the newly dead consciousnesses that are just entering into the astral or in-between world, and that somehow that those consciousness residues are empowered in some way. That must be a lie. That the real truth is that the membrane of death, or what is traditionally known as hell, is not a place where demons run the joint. They're actually there in profound levels of suffering, not profound levels of empowerment. So that is a very recent insight. Again, I should make a whole video just on that because it's a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to be certain to get that information through to you right now, because I'm always very clear, so that way I am not a creator or a perpetrator of falsehoods that keep you locked in disempowerment, because I have a whole teaching about the economy of hell, the membranes of death, the things that live there, and the sense they've created really almost an entire empire made and sustained by the siphoning of energy from the living, that it makes it appear as if like hell is this cushy place where they've made themselves very happy and comfortable, and then they're, from that vantage point, being able to be empowered at the exploitation of other people. But that is not the true definition of what that place is supposed to be. That membrane place that is defined as hell is supposed to be a place where it is love. That's what that waterfall that we know as death is actually a force, like a fire hose of love that is very, very strong in its stream of information that is coming out of it. That these things that are there, that are the exploiters, they don't dissolve. Love is supposed to be the universal solvent that dissolves consciousness, residues, and blockages, and makes it so that they dissolve. Their sweater is unknit, they go back to the beginning, they try it all again, and that these presences don't actually dissolve. So far from them being able to be like, hi, we'll create a giant empire of corruption and get my energy from these other places and keep myself happy and comfortable there. The truth is that they are being subjected to this constant force of love, which is truthfulness and divine information and universal solvent, and it is not having an impact on them other than to create an enormous amount of friction, as they are like in 100% resistance to change, growth, or transcendence, and that state of friction is a state of disempowerment and profound suffering. Not that they're sitting in hell as very, very comfortable demons with a giant demonic empire, kind of poking and twisting and tormenting the living you, and then getting your energy and eating your energy like an ice cream cone and laughing maniacally and saying, ha ha ha, that's so great. So I think that that's an important lie to restructure, so that to recontextualize, so that it's not considered like that they are in a power position over you in any way. So again, that's its whole own can of worms, and it's really the end of this particular class. So I hesitated to open that can of worms because I'm here talking with you and I'm so responsible. I'm like, let me just tell you guys that that's on the agenda. We're going to talk about this a lot more because it's a big part of, again, I'm super responsible in the seeds that I plant in your mind. If I planted a seed in your mind about this 10 years ago, I don't want you to paint that with the paintbrush of your mind in order to uphold and generate that reality structure when that is not a valid reality structure. So now questions, comments, and everything. Let me get on over here to chat. Charlie B, there we go. We were joking about worst apocalypse ever. That's why I'm laughing and saying your name, because I just read that comment. Worst apocalypse ever, October 4th. Pedro says, it was a long time ago. Someone asked me if FRL was related to the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. I replied that we are not Pastafarians. No, we certainly are not Pastafarians. So that's actually one of the challenges, because the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is a lighthearted farce, but it was created in response to some of the educational materials of the school board in a city in Kansas, United States Midwest, that was teaching creationism. And so they created this lighthearted farce about the flying spaghetti monster, and he touched me with his noodly appendage, and that's where the world was created. And then it even became something of an alternative belief system, to the point that it's listed on some people's driver's license. They're Pastafarians, all right? It's a joke that's gone way outside of the bounds of how far that joke should go. But the problem is, my thing is really serious. I'm not just joking. I know. So although I created this very lighthearted name for what I'm sharing with humanity here, the concept of what I'm sharing is very profound. The person that I am is very responsible, and I'm not merely a farce. and I'm very invested in the truth of what I have to share here. And so I generally don't like to be put in the same breath as the flying spaghetti monster, because my thing is very serious and very real. And in times I've been philosophical, because now I have much better traction in terms of YouTube, which is why my pinkies are up and I dance around in this way, because I used to literally have like 52 views on my YouTube channel. And it's very important for me to be able to have a voice and share this information as widely as I can with humanity. And this particular sharing platform is one of the, largest ways to be able, I'm not in the mass media. I'm an independent person in independent media trying to share very real lessons of spiritual uplift with people. And it used to be very difficult for me to find my audience. And people used to tell me, they'd be like, yeah, your videos came across my feed and I never watched because I was always like, what's this stupid lasagna thing? That I don't want to be dismissed, is what I'm trying to say. In fact, if I share with you a little bit more my personal journey, I've been on a quest for not being dismissed for a very long amount of time. So one of the first things was when I first came here, I'm in a female body with a particular face, skin color, and hair color that I didn't know meant that I would be more likely to be dismissed than other appearances. I had to learn. I had such a steep learning curve that you can be dismissed based upon your gender, and you can be dismissed based upon your appearance. And along about the same time that I was starting to become more articulate and learning about words like harmonics, I was like, I don't want people to dismiss me. I want people to take me seriously. So I even got what I called a take me seriously outfit, including take me seriously shoes. And the take me seriously outfit was like this little black half jacket. And then I had like these little black shoes that you would wear to work, to an office position. And I'm like, this will help people to take me seriously. And I was at an art show and I was prepared to talk about the concepts behind my work, and they still didn't take me seriously. And then after that, I was like, throw it out the window. I'm wearing rainbows all the time. But this has been my quest for not acceptance, but to not be dismissed and to be recognized as actually, I have such an amount of information. You could call me a database, but I am an alive person and data is alive. But I have so much information and I'm connected to a giant cosmic library that it would be like the ultimate foolhardiness for humanity in some way to say, we don't take you seriously, or we don't listen to you, or we don't want to know about you for whatever reason. I'm like, guys, shoulders to the time. Guys, I got so much to tell you about, because I'm talking about your academics, your scientists, your previously established gatekeepers for knowledge and the validity of thought systems. I'm like, I am an otherworldly visitor and I have a huge amount of information to share with you, and I would love to do so. And have not always found a very warm welcome either in my communities or in the academic world. And so I always keep the door open. I'm like, hey, anytime you'd like to have this conversation, I am totally ready to talk with you and tell you literally what you would consider to be mind-blowing, profound secrets of the structure of the cosmos. But until that time, I will be putting all of that information into very, very exact calculative proportions on all of my paintings. And that was always my motivation. I'm like I'm going to put all the accuracy that I can into my paintings. And even if I'm not here or not articulate or whatever, you could literally measure them with calipers and compare and learn. But it would take some intelligence to be able to even do that. But have so much to share. I really long for the day that my gifts and access to information are really more appreciated on a larger level in your world, and I can really share this stuff with you. There's questions, I think, about whether humanity is ready for it. I always think that you're ready for it. I don't think that I would ever hold back and be like, no, I condescend to you. You're not ready yet. But when I was talking with someone who visited my studio in, I think it was 2015, he looked around my studio for the first time and his jaw dropped. And he also had tears in his eyes. And this is kind of like a rough, not very emotionally demonstrative guy. And he was very profoundly affected by it. And he was like, wow, like I'm just imagining what type of a world we would have for you to find acceptance and celebration of your paintings, because they're so amazing and there's so much here. And he seemed to think that we'd be like 50 or 100 years in the future. And I remember thinking like no, like this, it could be tomorrow. Like, don't wait. You don't have to wait 50 or 100 years. But I understood where he is coming from. He comes out of a particular background of academia and engineering and the corporate infrastructure of what it would take for those entrenched power systems to be able to recognize, accept, and celebrate information of this level. And that comes from me or through me. But I don't think it's going to take 50 years because I've actually watched humanity level up a lot since 2015. And because that was a time when like a lot of people didn't know about what is the toroid shape. What are all of these shapes that I talk about and all these concepts that I talk about as like the precursors to lasagna were very foreign or minimally known or minimally recognized. And now they are concepts that are really quite widely accepted and spoken about and celebrated. So I'm like, okay, like if you guys are recognizing this and celebrating this and accepting this, like you're only a hop, skip, and a jump away from recognizing lasagna. And again, the door is continually open because that's what it's like when you are a higher dimensional visitor. Like, here's the way I would talk about it. Like if you went back in time to a very simplified time, like whatever, Neolithic times, and you brought with you something like the Pythagorean theorem, because you can't bring a physical object with you, but you can bring like a music or a formula or something like that with you. And you tell them like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And they're like, make a flint tool. Like, how does that help me to do anything? Start a fire, do something. Not that interested in your abstractions. So you're gonna be like, okay, like these guys are gonna have to level up a little bit in order to even appreciate what a squared plus b squared equals c squared is. And then when they're ready for that, then they'll be ready for the other bigger stuff. That is very much what it is like for me coming into humanities perspective 20 years ago. A lot of objective materialism, almost total non-recognition of the subtle bodies and energy work. And you've leveled up a lot. Humanity has leveled up a lot in recognizing frequency medicine, like healings that do not involve surgery or molecular pharmaceuticals, the mind-body connection, quantum observership, and how you are literally creating and generating matter with your mind, even non-locality of DNA, and so much more that humanity is kind of getting away from. Give me a simple flint tool into being able to perceive and appreciate the value of a formula like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This could give you free energy, quote unquote free energy, or 0-point energy, or a higher dimensional form of access to electricity that will help you to save 3 cents on your monthly energy bill. It's much more than that. And so what I'm really bringing to you is something beyond a mere practicality of a flint knife. That is really a higher dimensional concept of freedom. And that concept of freedom is also more than something that can simply be exploited for materialistic purposes. It represents an overarching recalibration of your whole biosystem, the body. Like if you're not going to be singing the dance of death anymore, or dancing the dance of death in your DNA anymore, everything changes. If you move beyond mortality, everything changes. You recalibrate a lot. The perspective of wishing to have 3 cents cheaper electricity really becomes deprioritized as your spiritual attainment and your journey of your consciousness becomes the primacy of your focus and appreciation and rewards or behavioral reward system. So wait, let me go into more questions over here. Charlie B, thank you so much. This is one of the most beautiful comments. He says in capital letters, We are so grateful for Aurora, the cosmic troublemaker. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. It means the world to me, especially coming here in the first several years and not finding very much recognition or connection, and very much fighting uphill battles. And then being in solidarity with you as the planetary environment has become more invaded and more antithetical to life and to freedom. It means the world to me to have your recognition of my efforts, and that I'm doing a lot of things that aren't just whimsical or convenient for me, but that are really tangibly positive, uplifting, and empowering for all of you. I really thank you for that. Beautiful, beautiful comment. Thank you. And Lisa says, I am so grateful for flying rainbow lasagna. You're very welcome. Thank you for everything you share. We live to fly again. True organic ascension. Love you. Love received. Thank you also. Thank you for that recognition. And I like what you wrote. We live to fly again. That is it. I think you have a very strong remembrance, Lisa, and probably many others do in this group of people that watch my videos. You remember what freedom state is like. I'm sure that you do. Oh, you're so welcome, Joyce. Wait, I'm trying to just read because you've got that. Oh, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Joyce. So much love to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. She wrote a note on her notebook and was holding it up for me to be able to read. Thank you for that. Truly. Wow, you guys really sustained me a lot, because sometimes I have been kind of acting in a vacuum, and this is such beautiful feedback that you sustained me a lot in order to give me more Gatorade to help keep going on this amazing marathon. Truly, truly thank you so much for that. And I know that there are many of you who remember either consciously or indirectly of what it is like to live in freedom, what it is like to fly on wings of pure consciousness, what it is like to have genetic freedom, and to be able to intentionally create reality structures and then go inhabit those reality structures and have those adventures and then learn from them and grow. And you recognize the aberrations, corruptions, and criminal activities that are going on here, and you can feel exactly how wrong it is here. I am so happy to not only connect with you here, but I am so happy to serve you, that I am capacitated in the way, like, if you're a person that has a natural strength and you're able to lift something up heavy to be able to help someone else, they can't lift it on their own. I am so happy to have these capacitations to be able to do this heavy lifting for you and make possible things that wouldn't have been possible, and to be a protector in that way of your own inner development and attainments and inevitabilities. Absolutely makes me feel so good about the things that I'm doing here. Again, don't have any conflict or ambivalence about being here, even as my role and purpose or what I do is much beyond being an artist and a musician at this point. And I'm very much a freedom fighter. I have zero ambivalence about aligning with being a warrior, being a fighter. I've had to turn into that. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I am in this world too. And I'm very, very pleased to do it for you guys, truly.
Aurora, can I say something quickly? It's Rainbow Body.
Please do.
I just want to say that I think I speak on behalf of all of us, that you have such a unique voice, coming through, the filters of this world, and your voice and your teaching it stands alone. And, I've been hanging around and learning from you for, I don't know how many years now. I think those of us who find our way to you, we're already ready. Those of us who find we know in our hearts, that death is a hack. We knew as children that there was something very wrong. And we all kind of waited for and prayed for you to come into this moment in this role, to do everything you've gone through, to get into that body and learn to optimize and and save lives and heal people from that body. And I just want to say thank you. It's just so amazing to have all this group that's gathered today, and who knows how many more will gather on YouTube at this moment and say thank you. Thank you for going through everything you've gone through so that we can learn, learn to fly again, that we know we flew once and we're going to fly again. Thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome, Rainbow Body. It means the world to me to hear those words articulated. I'm soaking it up and internalizing it in this moment. And I'm so, so pleased to be able to do this for you. And like you said, the others. I agree. I think you guys know it on an inner level. I think you can feel it on an inner level. And I think that I affirm, confirm, and remind you of things that you already internalize and inhabit as profound truths of who you are. Oh, Charlie B is agreeing with you. Rainbow Body says, thank you, Rainbow Body. So much agree. You guys are wonderful, truly. You're so uplifting to me. I'm going to read more of these comments because they're so good. Pedro says, love the lasagna and the teacher too. Thank you. I know you have more extensive stuff. And Christina Marie says, absolutely life-changing finding you, Aurora. An understatement, much love. So much love received. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's just amazing to be able to feel this level of recognition. And I'm very, very blessed to be connected to literally, I feel like you guys are some of the best people in this world. Amazing, responsible geniuses in your own right, and totally with so much valor and so much courage to keep on fighting, even amidst the difficulties, like the odds are stacked against you in many, many ways. Indefatigable, never going to stop, continually believing and moving forward and believing in yourselves. Huge recognition flows back to you guys. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of what I share here. It means a lot to me. And Pedro also went on to say, I admit that when I knew what FRL meant, I thought that was an odd name. Good, it's good. And says, but the first of your videos I saw still is very interesting and with information I had not seen before. I thought, who cares about a funny name with all this great info? And here we still are. That's very honest. It's like a how we met story. I'm sure many of you might have that, like, oh yeah, I thought lasagna was a pretty weird name. Like, I admit to it. And it even kind of shows how much of a cultural outsider I am, because now that I know you guys a lot more, I'm like, oh yeah, like that is, yeah, sure. It's a bizarre thing to name anything, much less like some kind of, serious polygon shape. But it speaks to my, outsider aspect of being here. But also, it's kind of like if you can not get past, but just not be put off by something that is unusual or unfamiliar or described in a very, very different way, there's something of real value there. So for those who might have been dismissive because I don't follow a cookie cutter template or because I'm, very wildly divergent than what they expect, it's fine. And I hold the door open for those people as well. But for those of you who were able to move past any kind of inner blockages of like disbelief or wondering about if there's any value here, and you actually delved and you took a bite of lasagna and then you're like, this is actually good stuff. I'm so happy that you found my restaurant, and I'm so happy that you got some lasagna. This is literally what I do. So in the same exact way that your mother and father and other people held you as a little baby and imprinted that stuff on you, I am here as an alternative imprint. And I do this with people of all ages, where I'm like, I am dancing lasagna. Do you wanna dance along? And if you're into it, then I'm like, come on board, be part of the cosmic dance party. And if you're not into it, I'm like, I respect your choices and the door is still open, but please go in a positive direction that is right for you. And this happens to me all the time, like, especially with little kids on the playground. I'm always dressed in rainbow, and the little kids are in their stroller or they're playing at the playground. And I always wave at them, I'm like, hi, hi. And sometimes little kids are like, I love you. Like they want to reach out and touch me and eat me. And sometimes little kids are like, I'm afraid, and they hide in their mother's skirts. And I'm like, that is totally fine. Because if they hide and they want to be with their mom or with their dad, they're essentially saying, I like my old genetic way of doing things. I like my familiar genetic patterns. I don't want to have to do this other thing. That is beautiful and celebrated. They got the chance to make a choice, and they don't have to be doing what I'm doing or in alignment with what I'm doing. But people, including you guys, people of all ages that are like, you're like, whatever you are, I'm interested. Tell me more. I want to eat more of what this energy is. Then you are what I align with. And then I literally give off an energy to you and show you on a genetic level. Cheeky needs hugs over here. Show you on a genetic level what the potential is of being a human, what you can actually do with this human form that is so amazing and so miraculous, but which requires some amount of adventure. You're moving into a freedom state that is not the comforting status quo. So it takes a certain amount of adventurousness and self-responsibility to be able to do that, and a little bit of your own self-confidence to be like, well, that's a weird thing. I've never seen that before, but I like it and I want to do it and I want to go in that direction, even though it's different than what I or my ancestors have done in the past. Get it? I'm literally a new thing for your species. And some aspects of your species are like, no, we don't want to change. We're doing it this way for millennia. And I'm like, that's cool, it's fine. But some aspects of your species are very much in alignment with new stuff. And you're like, we want to change. We want to do it differently. We don't want to do it the same way that we've been doing it for millennia. And that is equally as valid because you are independent, sovereign beings. You're being given a choice in this world. My presence here as Lasagna literally means a cosmic choice being offered to you at the genetic buffet about how you want to act, how you want to be formed, and how you want your body to be structured, and how you want your reality to be structured going forward. And that's the ultimate fairness and the ultimate meritocracy. And then make choices, let the chips fall where they may. You know, and there's no punishment or reward. It's not like that type of a thing. We're never going to be like this. We're never going to be like this. This lasagna dance party is so awesome. See you suckers. Like, you get to go suffer. It's not like that at all. It is totally a celebration without judgment or condescension of people's particular choices and proclivities. If someone hides away from me and they're like, no lasagna for me, I'm like, fantastic. I celebrate you on your journey. Please go in the direction that is right for you, because they might need to go through a bunch of other stuff before they come to the profound self-empowerment of flying rainbow lasagnaing, transforming reality, getting a paintbrush, painting new narrative structures, all of these things. It might not be the right time for them. But for those that it is the right time for, and for those that are actually like, you're not only open to it, but you're like hungry for it. Like, I love it. Pedro, almost every class, you're like, you say, I love the lasagna. Like, you're so hungry for the lasagna. I love that in the same exact way that, like, whatever, a Greek or a Jewish grandma that like makes a lot of food, and you go there and you eat like a giant amount of food at their plate. They're like, oh, you make me so happy. Like, thank you for eating my giant food. It's like, this is why I'm here. This is why I make it. I am so happy when people really align with the ideas and energy that I have to share, and when they really internalize it and make it a part of their life and their own journey. So I have to give so much appreciation. Like, thank you, Rainbow Body. Thank you, Charlie B. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Joyce. Some of you have been with me on your own parallel journey in your life for like many years, and you've been internalizing the ideas that I share with you and the energies that I share with you. And I get super happy because I see you making it a part of your own life. Like, I'm totally an art teacher, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to teach you about color mixing. Then I want you to use it in your own paintings. Take the lasagna and run with it and apply it to your own life and to your own biology and to your own reality structures. And that makes me so happy when I see that happening. Not only are we not in competition, like, because I know this is big, because a lot of people, they could only recognize ego competition, but not only is there like, there's not competition at the level of lasagna, there is lasagna collaboration. That is the coolest, most fun, best thing in the world. When you are lasagnaing in your own life, and you're like, that guy's lasagnaing over there too. And you're like, fellow lasagnas, like, yeah, like, we got it. We are doing it. It's actually an amazing thing. Trying to think of a good analogy. And the only thing I've got is like when these two motorcycle guys, when you see them, they pass each other on the highway. They always give each other a little salute. Have you noticed that? These motorcycle guys, they salute each other. That's what it's like lasagna, lasagna, good lasagnaing. I salute you. But I do more than just a tiny little hand motion to salute you. Yeah, yeah. My full entire genetic body dances in joy. I'm like, lasagna, good job. Awesome. So awesome. And Rainbow Body is thanking everyone. Just thank you, everyone. So that's a big part of this. You know, there's the negative recognition of the interconnectedness of consciousness and of bodily form. If other people are polluting themselves or following their folly, you get flow back on you. But if other people are getting their SHIT together, it also reflects upon you. When you become empowered, when you work out and become stronger in your spiritual attainment, in your ability to create and generate and uphold realities, in your ability to heal yourself and heal others in your world, that positively radiates outward and reflects upon all of us and is a very, very positive thing. So I think that's actually, because Chiki is barking at me and she definitely wants me to take her OUT for WALK. But that's a good ending and wrapping up this idea of October 4th and some apocryphal date where something terrible might happen or something might not happen. We are on the timeline where not only something bad did not happen, but something wonderful happens. We assembled after the fated broadcast hour. Not only was there no catastrophe, but we got together and had this amazing conversation, learned, grew, were uplifted. We are flying in amazing new directions. And every single one of you have your own innate creativity where you're making and generating things that I wouldn't have thought of from my imagination. You're imagining them from your perspective, and more and more and more positive things in more and more and more positive directions. So not only did you avoid catastrophe and bad stuff happening, but you made it to this timeline where you're actually aligning with miracles, huge amounts of positive things happening, and huge amount of positive empowerment structures. So you're not on a timeline. It's like, it was a dud, nothing happened. You're actually on a timeline where it's like, nothing bad happened, but a lot of good stuff happens instead. So I think that's the best thing that I can possibly end on for right now. Total strength, encouragement, and recognition flows to all of you. And I am proud and honored to be flying Rainbow Lasagna alongside and with and amidst all of you. Thank you so very much. Profound love and gratitude flows out to you. Thank you.